qualities. So there is a holy well in County Kildare. It's called St. Bridget's Well, and that would have referred to Bridget, the pagan goddess pre-Christianity. And people would take their children there, their family members there, to cure a wart, for example. That's a very common one in Irish culture. We still do that today. And we also have stones and other topological features. So the Blarney Stone is a famous one. So if you kiss the Blarney Stone, you get the gift of the gab, which is a gift of conversation. Big thing in Irish culture. Ireland has a rich culture with healing and folk practices and folk magic, and it's just such a part of our culture here. It didn't seem to clash with Catholicism, that would have seen a lot of that as heresy, so people would have practiced both alongside each other, and it somehow worked. A lot of belief in healers here, spiritual healers. So if you've heard of the seventh son, it's a very Irish thing. My grandfather was one, and he was a healer. It's very important in Irish culture, passing down herbal cures and remedies. It's still quite common practice in Ireland to attend a faith healer, a spiritual healer. One of the traditions that runs in my family is called blood stopping. So it's essentially the ability to perform a ritual to stop bleeding. And we have a lot of personal stories of our family of people who've been in hospital and on the deathbed hemorrhaging, and they've been able to apparently stop the blood. But even today, it's quite common to attend a healer. So there could be healers for a very specific ability, or there could be general faith healers. With the blood stopping, usually somebody would reach out to them, or they come across, there's a story of my great-grandparents or great-great-grandmother coming across a horse and carriage accident on the road, and the person was dying. And they would perform a ritual. It's sort of a prayer, and I have the prayer myself. It's passed down through generations. So they would say this prayer and perform a specific ritual around that, and that's really what would happen. And we never had witchcraft trials here like a lot of countries do. And part of the reason is that it's just so viewed in Irish culture to practice these folk practices that it was never seen as conflicting with Christian values, as opposed to Scotland, for example, which has a very similar culture. So we had one or two witch trials, but in general, we just didn't persecute people for those types of things. They were very revered and respected, even today. So there's a few famous cases of Irish witches, one being in the city of Kilkenny, which is also a Viking-founded city. And the story goes that a lady had multiple husbands. They died mysteriously. People started getting suspicious. So they accused her of witchcraft, but she somehow managed to shift the blame onto her maid. So this woman's name was Alice Kidler, and her maid was called Petronella de Clare, I believe. So Petronella ended up being executed,
I'm back.
mistakenly for being a witch, and Alice fled the city. So that's one of the famous. There's another famous one, Bridget Cleary. But I think that's pretty much it in terms of witchcraft. Generally speaking, probably similar to other countries, women would have been accused of being witches for whatever reason. I think in the case of Bridget Cleary, it was her husband wanted to divorce her, accused her of being a witch, and she was executed. But that witchcraft is very much a part of Irish culture. So holy wells are thought to get their power from either a figure, a deity, a god or goddess in Irish mythology. I'd spoken about Boann. So Boann is part of the River Boyne that circles around the hill of Tara and the various settlements in County Meath. But it comes from a goddess, Boann. So Boann would be an elemental, but it would be a physical attribute. So in Ireland, many of those topological features, such as water, rivers, water features, trees, other topological features, were considered to have magical or healing abilities. So generally, for example, healing warts is a common one in Ireland to go to the holy well. You go to the well, you splash the water on the affected area, or you can take some of the water away and have some in your home and use it, just common for warts. Sometimes a saint, which maybe previously wasn't associated with Christianity, will become a saint then in the eyes of the church. They're often associated with certain areas, so St. Bridget is associated with that area in Kildare. So you would tend to have even schools and churches, and for confirmation in the Catholic Church, people tended to take the name of the local saint. So generally in that area you would have things attributed to that saint. So the Holy Well would be St. Bridget's Well, the local church would be St. Bridget's Church. That's generally how it works here. The gods and goddesses, or many of them, are form a group called the Tuatha Dé Danann. They were the original race of entities that came to Ireland, so they were semi-divine, and they would have been considered gods and goddesses. So a lot of our main figures are from that tribe, but when Christianity hit Ireland, they got demoted in a way, and they became the fair folk, fairies. So we call them Dina Ushla, which are the noble people. So really our fairies are seen as almost like fallen deities. So perhaps that's why they had so many special abilities. A lot of Christian practices would have taken popular pagan practices and kind of adapted them to Christianity to make it more digestible to the average person for conversion. So they would have taken gods and goddesses and made them saints instead. And a lot of our main saints probably would have come from those types of origins. But sometimes it was a way of the Catholic Church of demoting some of these figures as well. So obviously there's nobody higher than God in the Catholic Church, so you can't have multiple gods and goddesses. So it went from polytheistic to monotheistic. So they found ways to adapt these figures and incorporate these figures in a way that was like, it's called St. Bridget's Well, and that would have so they a deity, a god of the water, happy.
So fairies, what are they? This ain't Tinkerbell.
No, they're not the Disney depictions. They're actually much scarier. In Ireland, they're very much feared and respected even today. We had a tribe to Ireland, and it was documented in what's called the Book of Invasions, which are multiple books and manuscripts written in the 5th century, I believe, and it documents the migrations into Ireland. One of those migrations was the Tuatha Dé Danann, which were a mythical, semi-divine race believed to come from the tribe of Danu, and they would have been our gods and goddesses originally, but around the dawn of the Christian spread into Ireland, they would have been demoted to fairies. But we would have had a lot of other fairy creatures, like elementals, like Boan that I mentioned, or the Banshee that you might be familiar with. She's actually a type of fairy, a very scary fairy, and she is the name for fairy in the Irish language. Hiada is the plural, meaning fae. So with the Banshee, she was kind of an omen of death, something I was really scared of when I was a child. The idea is that if you hear the Banshee crying, somebody in your family is due to die. So it's pretty scary. But she would attend funerals. You know, a real woman would attend funerals, and they would hire this woman to wail and cry and stir up the crowd. So there is an association with the Banshee with those practices as well. So the idea would be you never want to meet a Banshee, because obviously she could do some pretty bad things. But there's a depiction of the Banshee, and she would have long, dark hair, not like me, and she would sit combing her hair with almost like a mythical comb. And sometimes it was seen that she would leave the comb as a trap, and that you never touched her comb, because you'll face some pretty severe consequences, or she may find some way of kind of grabbing you into the other world.
People to this day are like very cautious about disturbing fairy, trees and bushes. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, so you don't mess with the fairies in Ireland. So even calling them fairies is seen as disrespectful. We call them the good neighbours. And as I mentioned, that the other world where the fairies reside is not really other. They exist as a neighbour on this plane. But we do have certain formations like the hawthorn trees associated with the fae in Ireland, and fairy forts, which are usually a round formation of flowers or some kind of plants that look quite out of place, quite kind of spherical, and the idea is that you never disturb one. My house was apparently built on a fairy fort, so not good luck. But the idea is that you don't upset them. So if you are living in an area that there are fae settlements in, that you leave certain things like butter, cream back in the day, or iron, that if you want to ward away the fairies, apparently they don't like iron. There's also Irish mythology about changelings. So the fae could pass into this world and use a glamour, which was like a type of mask to appear as human. And there's lots of stories. There's a document, an online archive of stories of people who've met the fae and seen the fae. but sometimes they appear as human and then they drop their glamour. But they would sometimes take human children or human babies and replace them with a changeling. And usually the family would notice that their baby had suddenly become ill or they were maybe very sickly. And that could be a clue that the Fae have taken your child into the other world and they've left a fairy child. About maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we had a large highway or motorway being built in Ireland. And there was a big discussion about the fact that it would have been running through a fairy fort. And rather than risk the wrath of the fairies, it was actually completely diverted, which would have cost a lot of money at the time. Obviously, in more ancient times, they could put a curse on your family as well, or leave a changeling.
And would you say a lot of people to this day believe in those things?
I would say there's a kind of a passive belief that people don't want to tempt fate. So they may not actively practice these things, but there's still a reverence for it in Ireland where people don't want to find out or F around and find out. So, yeah, I would say there's definitely a respect for that Irish culture to this day. The Disney version of fairies is very much not what exists. I think that's quite common in Irish mythology. There's a lot of dark, revengeful types of stories and figures. And, you know, the idea that you respect that area of life, you respect those entities.
So fairies
you don't get anything for free. To call on a figure in Irish mythology, you have
Irish
to be
thing,
very
Ireland,
desperate
Irish
and
thing.
expect that you're going to have to
Fairies
pay something back in return.
evil.
You can give an offering. So depending on the entity, you have a
Not the
goddess or
Disney
fairy.
kind of
Fairies apparently like certain things, certain types of food, for example. Or it could be a deed that you do, a deed in their favor. It really depends on the god or goddess. You know, the Morrigan would have been a goddess of war, so you may call on her if you need support in that area, but she may ask you to do something or ask something of you that you may not want to do.
Is there any other piece of Irish folklore that you think is really interesting, like a specific spirit or energy before we wrap?
There is a headless horseman, the Dullahan.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many.
A mother in Florida is in jail for exposing her baby. A mother in Florida is in jail for exposing her baby to methamphetamines. Hi, my name is Rainey. I'm here to give you a crime news update that may not hit mainstream media. Jalen Brownworth, who is 32 years old, is looking. A man in Illinois stands accused of butchering. A Texas woman is headed to prison this week. If you haven't heard, this week, a man in Pennsylvania is accused of... A 47-year-old man out of Texas has been arrested. A firefighter father and a stepmother locked their... A man in California was...
Yeah, there's so many.
Spooky, spooky,
We do have a figure in
spooky.
Irish history called the Dullahan, and he's considered headless horseman, as the type that you would see in other mythology. So he would carry his head around. We do have hounds, like hounds of hell, that can accompany him as well. So it's almost like a headless hunt. And where I'm from, down in Carlow, there's a very small graveyard near where I live, and there are stories that a headless hunt or a procession would take place leading up into the graveyard of some of those figures, accompanying almost like a memory or an imprint of the past, accompanying souls into the cemetery.
These horsemen are looking for souls.
Yeah, they're looking for souls. So it's a lot of Irish stories would have been told to kids and teenagers, particularly my parents' generation, to scare them away from sneaking out at night. So you don't want to meet these figures. So haunted hills, there were headless horsemen, there were banshees, but it was believed in, but definitely feared and respected, and that was passed down to the next generation.
It's a good way to scare children.
Yeah.
Tell them
Don't
the
go
fairies.
to the haunted hill or the headless horseman's gonna get you.
Where I grew up, there's a haunted hill. When I was a kid, I asked my mom, where did the name come from? She was saying, well, when we were kids, our parents just said it was a haunted hill. It may not have been haunted, but we never went out at night on that hill, so it did its thing.
Well, awesome.
The curse is real.
Let the mummification ritual begin.
This Friday. Can you escape? Cronin's The Mummy. Rated R.
Ireland is a country steeped in mysticism and
I would
history,
love to
stemming
go
all the
to
way back to
Ireland.
the times of the
Ooh.
Druids and the Celts and the Druidic practices and the rituals and stone
Well,
circles and
Lainey
human
comes
sacrifices
from the.
and bloodline
Well, it's
rituals. So
actually
interesting. You're
English,
traveling through Ireland, but you
Irish,
feel like you're
Irish.
almost in a different world, and it really is so mystical. It's so
There
beautiful.
and
It's
something
breathtaking,
else.
but at the same time, there is an
Name.
energy that permeates the
Actually,
landscape.
I'll have to
Now,
even.
there's a lot of good energy.
And my
We've spoken with some of the bad energies in
mom's dad's side, his ancestors were from Ireland. It was a couple. It was actually a couple, and they came over here from Ireland in the 17th century. I looked it up, and they had a bunch. I don't know how many kids they had, but they settled in Virginia, and then their kids settled all down south, like North Carolina, South. I mean, all over, and so I thought that was pretty cool. Let's see. Laney family came to North Carolina. There we go. So they settled, actually, 18th century. So the family, including the biggest part of them, I guess mostly the children, migrated further south, settling in the Carolinas, particularly the Lancaster, South Carolina, and Union County, North Carolina region, border region. Oh, they came here in 1722. Okay, settling in Pennsylvania before migrating to Virginia. By the 1750s, the family migrated further south, settling in the Carolinas. That's pretty cool to know. Oh, wow. Ever heard of Wildcat Creek? Lou? Well, that's where they mostly. Mm. So that's pretty cool to know. So it is actually shortened by the Irish part, Mick Laney. So it's English and Irish. Introduced by the Normans, originally deriving from any of the many places in northern France. Hey, and that's a French name too. Hmm, hmm. So Jeez. So my mom's family ancestors, well, her dad's ancestors settled here before we even had Independence Day. That's pretty cool to know, Louis. Pretty cool to
Some
know.
of the bad energies in this series. Recently, I've been deep diving into the occult and esotericism, and even just different sides of Christianity and Christian miracles, and the more supernatural side of religion. So when I started reading about the holy wells in Ireland, I knew that we had to visit a few of them. A holy well is essentially a well, a spring, that holds a religious and spiritual significance in the minds of the Irish. Oftentimes, most times, these wells or springs were ancient Druid or pagan worship sites. So they would come to these springs and they held them in reverence. But later, when Christianity was brought to Ireland, a lot of these wells were turned into, sort of pseudo-Christian holy wells, where they then were attached to the stories of canonized saints like St. Patrick. The wells themselves are supposed to free flow with blessed water, water that can cure ailments, heal diseases, even heal warts on your hands. As you can see, there's so many interesting beliefs in Ireland. I mean, headless horseman ghosts, that is so crazy and so cool to me. But throughout our week that we spent in Ireland, I myself felt personally driven to visit these wells. There was something within me that was calling me to visit these wells. I don't know why. It's one of those things that I can't explain, but it was something that deeply fascinated me that I just felt, driven to explore. And so we set off investigating a few of these wells to see if there was any EMF energy in the environment. And the first one that we visited was actually the St. Patrick's Well. Just take a look. It's so beautiful. So right now we are in rural Meath County, Ireland, down a back road. Right next to us is the Hill of Tara, a very important megalithic site with burials dating back thousands of years, a site that held a lot of importance not only to the pagans and to those who practiced those more earth-based religions back in the day, but also to the country of Ireland. It was right on top of this hill, the Hill of Tara, where the Irish kings were crowned on a very famous stone that sits atop of the hill. So it's got a very important spot in Irish history. But right here at the bottom of the Hill of Tara is one of the many, over 3,000 holy wells here in Ireland. We saw the sign right here. You can see that old dilapidated looking sign, which I think is really cool. This is actually the Well of the White Cow, the Dark Eye Well. It has a lot of different names. It's now known as St. Patrick's Well, but we're gonna head up and check it out. Test it, see if there's some EMF reading.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
Right here, baby. Oh, there it is.
Water's so clear.
Look at this. This is one of the 6 wells of Tara listed in the ancient documents. It was borne many names. The Capert of Cormac is eastward from the Wrath of the Kings. Dark Eye, the Healer, the Well of the White Cow. 3 names to designate it, to make it known as the Well of Tara.
You see all the candles with the little bear down.
Oh yeah. Is it bear?
And the porch stuff over here on top as well.
Hmm.
How cool is this? And beautiful.
Flowers.
Someone had like a beanie. Look at burnt stuff. Burnt wood offerings. Statue on the bottom. So the thing is with these wells is that they're all supposed to be holy, like the name kind of describes, but it's said that the water that flows from these wells was either blessed or obviously with wells like this one, it held a great significance to the pagans. So if you touch the water, say a prayer. It's supposed to bring you, whether it's a wish or healing of some sort. And in this video, we're going to be paranormally testing these wells to see if any of our devices can pick up any energy or anything, any anomalies in the EMF or forces around the wells. You guys see anything on your devices?
I give you a couple little spikes on mine. Let me get you down close to the wall.
What's she meowing about? What is it?
It's Bootsie's.
Louie,
Touch the water.
you're a goofball.
Bootsy cat. It's a Bootsy cat.
You're a dork.
What's your name?
You're a
That is
dork.
Bridget's cross. Saint Bridget. She's an Irish canonized saint. It actually stems from a pagan goddess. I think it was Bridget.
Strawberry don't like me. She just don't like me.
No.
Saint. And it actually stems from a pagan goddess. I think it was Bridget or Brigitte. It was something like that that the Christians incorporated into Christianity. But that's her specific Irish Celtic influenced cross.
Well, you want to say a prayer, touch the water, see what it does?
Subi's mom,
Yes,
right?
indeed. I still meet you doing it.
Mm,
Subi's mom.
mm.
Subi's is Mike.
Don't say his real name. He's food.
Is he on there?
No.
Why not say it on
Else, don't say his real name.
there?
Don't say his real name.
What do you got? Why?
Just don't. A lot of people don't.
Okay, chill.
Well,
I'm just
this is
saying.
our very first thought, but we had no idea this was here. There's over 3,000 of these holy wells in Ireland alone. And it's just
Big money.
So I'm actually going to be filling a bottle full of water from these wells and bringing it home with me for good luck and hopefully somewhat of a connection to the divine. Bottle 1 collected. So right nearby St. Patrick's Well is actually another very interesting paranormal, pseudo-paranormal, spiritual thing. And that is a fairy tree. That St. Patrick's Well is right next to the Hill of Tara, a very famous hill. It goes back to ancient times. There are tombs in that hill. It's believed that this hill was used to communicate with deities or spirits. It's also where the old kings of Ireland were crowned on a certain stone on top of this hill. So it's a very famous hill. But off to the side, like we talked about with AD and the expert, there's a fairy tree. Typically in Irish folklore and in nature, if there are two hawthorn trees next to each other, it's a very specific type of tree. In Ireland, they form a portal to another realm. And they also, in that process, become fairy trees because it's believed that the fairies or the fae come in and out of the portal there, and travel around there, and live around there. And so it's customary for people to visit the tree, to make a wish, to leave an offering, and get to tap into that energy. So we decided to go give it a shot. Wow.
Hello. Do we have any food for you? You're sorry,
So right now we are visiting one of the most sacred places in Ireland, one of the most mysterious places as well, the Hill of Tara here in Meath County.
You see this clover in his hands? And on his hat? Look at 4-leaf clover on his hat.
So that statue right there is actually of St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland. He's got an association with this hill. I can't remember what it was. I think he conducted some sort of sermon or had some sort of religious event here on the Hill of Tara. This is an area that has megalithic graves, so graves that are thousands of years old. This area held a deep significance to the pagans and the spiritual peoples in Ireland. And crazily enough, right up there, I believe that's the stone. I think it's called the Stone of Destiny. I'd have to look it up, but it's the actual stone where the kings of Ireland were crowned. So if you can imagine back in the day, when they had these coronations, it would be just massive affairs. But what we're here to see is actually over in this direction, and it has to do with fairies. here standing in the area of the fairy trees here on Tara Hill. These are some of the most famous fairy trees in all of Ireland, and I'll put some photos on screen now. You can see during the summer months and spring, when people come to leave offerings on these trees, they become absolutely filled. Every single branch and twig covered in ribbon and string and full of offerings to the fairies. Now, fairies, interestingly enough, when the people first settled in Ireland, they claimed that they encountered
Where you going?
this species of spirits. This is what the legend states.
Meow.
And when these
Here.
settlers first
Where you
settled the
going?
island, they banished these spirits. Some of these entities, though, which are known now as fairies or even leprechauns, they went underground, they moved into
Come on.
trees, they went through portals, but they
Come
still remained here on Ireland. And that's where this legend
Come
comes
on.
from. These are basically spirits
Cow.
and entities that used to call this whole land home, and they were banished when humans came in. It's said in Irish folklore that when you have two
Come
hawthorn
on.
trees, you can see these are hawthorn trees based on these berries. These two hawthorn trees form a portal to another world. So right where I'm standing in Irish folklore, this is a portal to another realm where spirits enter and exit. And it's said that when you visit a fairy tree like this, because this is where these fairies or these energies make their homes, you're supposed to leave an offering. So you brought an offering today, but you're also not supposed to curse it, you're not supposed to damage it, you're not supposed to remove anything from the tree, because fairies, they're not always like Tinkerbell. They can cause mischief, they can cause mayhem, they can cause curses, and they can, according to legend, even kill people. I was reading stories about people who destroyed fairy trees or messed with them who died shortly afterwards. It's a common thing here in Ireland that there's tons of stories about. But yeah, this is just so cool to be standing. This is the land of fairies and enchantment and magic. This is an actual fairy hideout. And just look at that. Just want to come in here and zoom in on all these little things. Look at, there's so many offerings. There's strings. There's tied in right here. Clean and serene for 30 days. 30 days. So, coins actually that were shoved into the tree that appear to have grown into the tree. You see that? How cool is that? Like, these are actually grown into the tree now. They're wedged in there. Wow. Those are literally coins growing into the tree. Are you leaving a little offering?
Like a little healing stone for a lady that had open heart surgery.
Really?
Yeah. So I just need the offering as well, like kind of in advance. They thank you. That makes sense. Hopefully nobody touches it. I believe in all this.
Really?
Yeah, 100%.
You believe
It's
in
history. I think it's history. It's here. It's on all historical ground.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that because we have a pretty large paranormal channel in America.
Okay.
So we're here, like, we all believe in the energies, and that's why it's so cool because we don't have this in America.
We're the family that just has the energies around us all the time. All the time.
And you really think that, like, leaving something on this tree would...
Yeah, and I also think with the way everything's gone in the world today, you just need to have a little bit of grounding and faith as well.
Especially when you live in America right now.
It's bad over here, trust me.
Oh, God, damn scales.
The crime is just everywhere. And everyone just needs to just...
understand the boundaries of it.
Wow.
But enjoy. I hope we made a good impression.
You did. All right.
You finally reach the
All right. Have a good one. Crazily enough, we were actually here, and
plan to find
we spoke to a woman who was a local to the area who was actually coming out here to leave a tribute and offering in hopes for, what was it, blessing for a heart surgery? Open heart surgery? Open heart surgery. So she actually came all the way out here, yeah, to give good energy for that heart surgery. And that's exactly what I love about this stuff. That was so cool. And she even said it, I believe in everything. And of course, right over here, someone comes and tells us it's real. Wow, that was so cool. Yeah, I was telling them on the way up here too. I love the dark stuff. I love demons.
I hit the wrong nut.
You walk away from them feeling really good.
We bought a fresh
So
boat
interesting.
and started moving up off the Losi to look for a suitable place to live in. But it very soon became clear that this river was far too high and fast for the boat. It was not going to work. After being so excited about sighting sharks,
You have to look at it in the
once
sense
again,
of like
this simulation
you have Christianity and you have all these other
we
faiths
need
and
it
the
to
way
fight
that
it.
people believe in those. It's the same way that people believe in a lot of stuff. I mean, through ancient times, religion
Yeah.
was connecting with
What?
Earth and
Look where I get
whatever
ready for
energies
bed.
were around with them. So leaving offerings like this, I mean, that dates back to
I can't sleep
the
all
beginning
day,
of
man.
times. I mean, this is like
Man.
the intense stuff that you can feel. It's cool to see that these are like you have all these other groupings of trees everywhere, and then just two hawthorn trees in the middle of this field. These are, this is the portal to another world.
I wonder how old they are.
Even just look at how old some of these ribbons are. Like, this has probably been on here for months, years. And then down here, you've got, like, look at all these offerings. Painted rocks, coins. There's a note back there. But all of these are offerings too. Like, they're all tied on here. There's like hundreds, thousands on this tree.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Well, that looks like something a leprechaun would have. That's a gateway to a store.
Jack, what are you smoking?
Oh, someone left a turd from the fairies. That's they gotta be cursed now. And lastly, what I'll say that's so cool is you think about it's just a tree, right? I mean, it could be a portal, it could be fairies everywhere, but you think about all these, every single ribbon is a story and a wish and intention and energy, and so many people that might be sad, that are hoping for something better, desperate people, happy people. There's just so much energy right here. Lost loved ones. They're sick themselves, all kinds of things. It's really powerful stuff. Wow. Well, you guys want to tie one on?
Yeah.
Do it one at a time. Is any fairy or fae or any energies associated with these trees? I'm leaving lots of love and light and happiness, and I believe in the water from the...
Which I think is very interesting. I mean, obviously, lots of Christian traditions stem from pagan traditions, like Christmas traditions.
What about over here?
A little like a threat.
Yeah, go back into
I
that.
thought we'd go and investigate. I thought
There are some places in this world that seem to be evil. It's as simple as that. Locations where negative energy is drawn to. Places where the unspeakable happens. One of those places is in a simple neighborhood in London, England. And it's the home of some of the most notorious conspiracy theories in all of British history. It's a quaint little house on a very normal seeming street, plagued forever by some of the darkest rumors, allegations, and accusations that the British public has ever been informed of. Walking down this street, I couldn't help but notice how normal everything was. How people...
Albie. Oh.
worth more than 100. Shut man. What's going on? I think he just sold us a buddy. I think the idea is to launch the little boat upstream and let the current take us down, so that we can find the perfect bait spot. Just start keeping an eye. The water.
Wow. That's great. Watching for crabs.
No. About 5 k's up in the river, mate.
This is deep and so many height.
Yeah, come back.
Yeah. Can we do it from here?
Through just the river. We had the chance to choose a really good habitat, a real good location to leave our baby. Bingo, we found what seemed like a good spot. We just had to have a look around. This is hippo country. We've got it here. Hippos are one of Africa's biggest killers.
Every time she wants it's not like it's perfect to pull out nice and close to the red backs. They don't lose much energy.
Not all of the seeds going to go out, so just take a few days for the crops to slow. I think this harvest is good for the crops to grow. So the silence and wave and get up low. So this is a nicer channel.
Get some seeds and pull it out into the stems.
Good job, Tess. The house found this. Got our bait set. Go card and search for the first time. Just going up there.
These hippos are getting agitated. This is their territory, and they want to come home.
The reality is, too, we're not going to come in and just keep receiving every single down the street. So if we just lie a few of these fish at the surface off that, this is the best setup we've got. Notice there is a bull shark area, that's a crocodile area. Notice what bull sharks and crocs like to eat. That is fruit.
Baiting is necessary to simulate what would happen naturally. But it's important that we don't manipulate these animals in a way that might change their normal behaviour. Together with Stumpy and Toad, we return to the bank. This is going to be a day we've been waiting for, to see crocs and sharks together. We reckon that Stumpy might discourage the hippos from coming too close.
If there was one thing that was different and something I'm very proud about with this expedition is the fact that it's genuine, it's organic. I'm not trying to create stories or information that doesn't exist. We're going out here to test and to examine a story that we've heard to see if it's actually real. It's just like a story. That's a croc. These crocs don't bite through the stuff. It's just that they're just broken off the trees.
Girl, what gets stopped on? Walk right in front of this. It's first interesting. That's exactly what walk right in front of this. See how they're going to get close. Wow. New piece actually.
That's so weird. So much more of a shot across the desert. This is amazing.
Worry about is there something in your past that's going to come up in a campaign that you were given firm and category. Thanks to generous Phil. You got an ounce, right? Seriously, right?
I'm done.
Or you just give it to me.
Get my pajamas on. I'm back. Good. How was your day? Sorry. I just came back. I just went and put my pajamas on. Changed into my PJs.
What did it say? Huh? What did it say? Just a Wheatley? Just a Wheatley? Is that how much you love weed? Is that how much I love weed?
Normal. Everything was. How people pass by this home without a second thought. But when you take a peek behind the curtain and a long, hard look at the real history of this guest house in London, you'll realize that you're now staring at one of the darkest, most evil places on planet Earth. And I had no idea how dark this journey was going to be.
The father of a Scotland Yard covered up a son's murder, reportedly involving a Conservative MP. That goes back some years. And grotesque allegations. No, we are, I think, in the early stages of a reckoning with our kind of past, of things happening on a scale out of the gravity, which just a few months ago would have seemed unimaginable and almost too horrific to contemplate.
It's here at Elm Guest House in South London that he says he faced his most violent experience. It was raided by police in 1982. Newspapers at the time said that at least 3 MPs were questioned. It was being used as a gay brothel, and it was alleged children as young as 10 were involved. In the 80s, it was reported officers found whips, chains and ropes.
I was tied up here. I don't know why I was tied up, but I was tied up. With my hands behind my back. I do remember that. Laying down there and took photographs. Other men were here. Other men came into the room. It took one for this one man. There were other men here. 35 years on, an officer familiar with that inquiry has come forward to tell its story and how it came to a sudden and mysterious end.
I won't believe anything that comes out now if it's got the government stamps on it, because it's been proved to be fraud, soiled, and an absolute dog's dinner, as I said.
She made that statement to the House indicates that there was
I really did love her.
Investigations won't conclude that no credible victim has ever come forward alleging specific offence suffered whilst at the guest house, and that no criminal person can ever be conclusively identified as having the child there.
Okay.
In the 1980s,
All right, I
London,
love you.
England, a VIP
I love
made
you.
up of the
Hey,
rich, famous, and elite
I'll call
was
you
being
tomorrow.
operated out of the House of Freedom.
About
Officially,
6:30.
She's silly.
doesn't exist. However, according to countless victims, the home behind us was a house
I'll
of
call you
horrors where
6:50.
young children were trafficked, chained up,
All right, love you.
videotaped, and some victims' family members even believe that their child was murdered inside of this house by powerful people in the British government. In this documentary, we are going to be blowing the lid wide open on this thing. This is going to be extremely disturbing, extremely eye-opening. Yeah, this is really important, so please help us by sharing this video out and by paying attention.
Come on.
Because what we're about to show you
Come on.
will disturb you.
Get your furry butt up here.
I'm Colin Brown, and let's
Look,
just get
look.
into the story. There are
Look.
some places on earth that
Oh,
God
yeah.
seems to have turned his back on. Places
Lay
so
down.
evil, so
Lay
demented,
down, baby.
they would make you question the
We
existence
need to go to
of
bed,
God in
Tia.
the first place. Venues
Aw.
where evil is allowed to thrive.
What do you mean,
The devil seems to have taken
I
up
gotta go
permanent
exercise.
residence.
I know. Oh, she got up and left.
Homes in which children are routinely removed, and
I'm gonna
houses
get up
where
and make
misery is
breakfast.
stains the walls. One of those places in the 1980s was the Elm Guest House in London, England, a home shrouded in mystery and conspiracy, and the location of some of the most infamous and disturbing crimes against children in British history. But according to officials,
I might use the air fryer.
in fact, according to the authorities in England,
For
none
what?
of the following information that
Yeah,
I'm about to
that's
tell you
nice.
is true. I'm lying to you. This is
Put
one big
cheese on
lie.
and
But that
salt.
itself
The thing is, you can't do the whole bag in there.
some of the British government's darkest secrets. Secrets that they do not want you to hear. Children with no family or family
Unless you're gonna plan on doing
some
them
of the most vulnerable in
a
society.
little bit at a time.
Funding, placement, and foster care to survive. And while there are indeed many good foster care
Yeah.
facilities
How
and
much is
families
it?
out
It'll
there,
make
there
quite
are
a
also
bit
many
for
who
one.
submit those in their
Huh?
care to
It'll
horrendous.
make quite a bit
This
for
is one
that.
of those
Yeah.
stories, the story of the Elm
Probably
Guest
don't have to
House,
do
and all
long.
the interconnected organizations and evil people involved with it. And it
I
should be
think it'd
noted
be better
some of
than
the
where I
terminology
eat.
in this story
Meet me
North
halfway.
America. For example, the phrase local authority care refers to children in the UK who are under the care of the government. There are other distinctions in this story, but we'll talk about them along the way. In the early part of the 1980s, it's alleged that boys from the Grafton Close Children's Home, run by the Richmond Borough Council in southwest London, were preyed upon by a ring that was operating out of a nearby location named the Elm Guest House. The Elm Guest House was a gay-friendly establishment where it was said that underage boys from the Grafton Close Children's Home were brought to have relations with adult men. Underage were also said to frequent the home. It's of note to mention that the homosexual age of consent at this time in the UK was 21. This is higher than the heterosexual age of consent at the time. The perpetrators of these crimes were said to be important people. Some were said to be members of parliament or MPs. There was a member of the royal family accused, an MI5 officer, pop stars, a member of the National Front, members of Sinn Féin, and a Soviet spy, amongst others. Haroon Kassir from India and his wife Carol from Germany were the operators of Elm Guest House at the time that our story takes place. It was advertised in the gay press as a place where homosexual men could meet. The newsletter for the Conservative Group for Homosexual Equality strongly recommended the guest house. This was a newsletter that was read by a lot of politicians and powerful people. Neighbors of the guest house at the time thought that it was a brothel because people were constantly going in and out at all hours of the night. The guest house was raided in 1982, and the homeowners were charged with running a disorderly house. They were eventually convicted, fined, and given suspended sentences. Any other charges related to that police raid were dropped. But before we get into all this information, we first need to provide a little bit of context. The Elm Guest House was a three-story Edwardian property located on Rocks Lane near Barnes Common in southwest London, which once featured 8 guest rooms and amenities such as a sauna, a solarium, and a video studio. It was advertised in those gay-friendly publications at the time as being a place where homosexual members of society
who, at the time, were somewhat prosecuted across the globe for their sexual orientations, could let loose, be free, and live life on their own terms. It was indeed a popular spot, and reservations at the Elm Guest House were sometimes hard to secure. Elm Guest House placed advertisements in specialist gay publications in the 1980s, including, like I said, that newsletter for the conservative group for homosexual equality. But interestingly, in that advertisement, it stated the facilities include a sauna, solarium, and video studio. They put it right there out in the open. So apparently, from the surface, the Elm Guest House was a friendly, welcoming spot for people to come relax at. The official narrative that the government in the UK is still going with today, that the Elm Guest House was never anything more than that. A hotel for gay individuals where they could relax and unwind, where it never took place. It was a building filled with sunshine, happiness, and love. Nothing to see here, essentially. But researchers who have dived really deep into this story know that that's just not the case. Today, the building has been converted into 2-bedroom apartments, with its current residents having no connection to the past allegations. For, as you're going to see throughout all of this, the British government has tried its hardest to distance itself from the allegations and firestorm that surrounded the Elm Guest House. They've almost tried to remove those words from the vernacular of the English language. They've tried their hardest to renovate the home, resell it, and force society at large to move on. But as we know here on this channel, when there's smoke, there's fire. And the smoke surrounding the Elm Guest House was more like a massive sandstorm that completely blocked out the sun. This
With 3 of the best in the biz ever doing it.
starts in June of 1982. The property was raided by local authorities. So there were a couple things that led to this initial raid on the Elm Guest House.
Feeling a bit cramped for space?
Began after a 10-year-old boy received medical care after he was and claimed that, at the time, he had been living inside of the Elm Guest House and had been by multiple older men. The allegations of made by the child were confirmed by a medical examiner, which indeed showed that he had been repeatedly over a prolonged period of time. The boy also stated to the authorities that he called one of his Uncle Leon, and this person could possibly be a politician. We'll understand the significance of that name in a moment. And this allegation was one of the couple that really kicked this thing off. One major driving factor and impetus behind the raid was research and information that was gathered there. While on the property, inside of the guest house, by 2 undercover officers from the local police department. You see, in the late 70s and 80s, allegations had been made by multiple victims that by individuals while they were inside the Elm Guest House. At first, these reports were ignored, but eventually, for some reason or another, the authorities decided that they were actually going to do their jobs and investigate some of these claims. So, they came up with a plan. To gather information about just what exactly may have been going on at the guest house, which, just to remind you again, was a boutique hotel, health spa, and club that catered to homosexual men, 2 male officers donned disguises, created cover stories, and went undercover to the guest house, posing as a homosexual couple. According to testimony, at one point while they were inside of the guest house, one of the officers claimed that they asked a staff member if children might be part of this offered there, and that answer from an employee at the Elm Guest House had been, yes, children were a part of this offered at the home. This was enough information for them to get the paperwork pushed through to enact a raid on the property. When they weren't done gathering information, they received conversations with other staff that they engaged in that evening. The undercover officers also discovered that a retired, powerful judge had
Almost like a
the house's
but it was there on tape. A shark swam away from us, almost past the crop coming in out of reach.
The officers were then formally invited to a sauna party the following week, but one of the guest house associates were also told that around 200 guests would be attending. This, they thought, would be huge. Here you had a house supposedly filled with prominent individuals who were pimping out for their use at their parties and in the in-house video studio. And now the 2 undercover officers have been invited to another party with many more attendees, and assumedly a lot of illegal things happening. And so, acting on this gathered intel, a date was set and a raid was planned by London authorities. On the evening of the bust, those same 2 undercover officers first showed up alone and entered the Elm Guest House, wanting to confirm that there was a party going on, and to scope out the interior and check out the exact situation that they were going to be dealing with. But things didn't go as planned. According to the authorities at the time, throughout all these exchanges, one of the undercover officers had been wearing a fake cast to hide a wiretap recording device. They wanted to capture these admitting to their crimes against children on an audio. And so, on the evening of the raid, those those two officers donned their disguises and their wiretaps and knocked
At
on
that
the front
stage,
door of the
we
guest
thought it
house.
was
They
over.
were immediately met with
Then,
a raucous
everything
scene.
fell
There
into
was
place.
indeed a small party at the
We
guest
managed
house,
to
and in
finish
attendance,
truck
according to
with
these
some busy
officers,
shop
were some
in the same
recognizable
shop.
individuals that would be known by the
Yes,
general
and
public.
what
But
must
at
be
the
the
very
first
beginning
time
of the
ever,
evening, as
we
they
captured
entered
on
the home
camera
and
as
began
that
to
busy
take in their
shop
surroundings,
swimming
the
less
two
than 2
undercover
meters
officers were
from an
greeted
armed
by one of
crocodile.
the owners and operators of the hotel, a woman named, like we said
So what
before,
did we learn?
Carol Kassir. Carol,
We learned that all
recognizing
the
the
evidence we'd
officers
seen
from the week
before had
before,
been
began
manipulated
chatting the men up,
or
and
was
at
due
one
to
point
human
went in for a
intervention.
hug. But somehow, this hug pulled the wrong
What is
wire
the
and
ultimate
put pressure
result
on
of
the
this
wrong
mission?
spot, which caused the
These
wiretap
secret
device
predators
to go
do
AWOL
coexist,
and begin
and as
making
far as we
noise
could
and
see,
playing police
they do
radio
seem to
chatter out
tolerate
loud.
each other.
Immediately,
Maybe
the
not happily,
officer's eyes
but they
and
didn't go
Carol's
looking
eyes
for
grew wide.
confrontation.
At that moment, Carol
And
knew
for
that the two were
ourselves,
police
we
officers,
learned
and
far
the
more on the
officers
journey,
knew that they had been
even though the
exposed.
outcome
Immediately,
is a
the
raw
authorities
first.
waiting outside of the guest house sprung into action, and the raid was executed, with armed members of London police busting in through the front doors and yelling at everyone to remain still. Now, interestingly enough, to this day, we still don't know exactly what the authorities discovered inside of the Elm guest house that evening. We don't have a full list of the names of individuals that were found inside the home. We don't have a list of the materials recovered. And to be honest, information in general regarding this raid is extremely sparse. There are barely any newspapers detailing this incident online and very few official reports. And in addition, the stories from the authorities about this raid and what happened / what they found that night have changed many times since the original reporting. It seems like the police had stumbled into a den of darkness that they weren't meant to discover, and they were about to be silenced themselves. But we do know a few key details about the guest house and the raid, details that were gathered from newspaper reports at the time, and some leaked documents and the testimonies that were involved.
Meet me halfway.
With billions around the world. Explore your world every day on Earth Day 365.
Y'all think you wipe my ass up when you come in. You gotta go with daddy. You gotta go with daddy.
Where everybody was. Stop.
What's that over?
What?
That black thing on the floor.
Oh, that's my earbuds.
That's good for you. Coming?
Yeah, here, a little bit.
A little bit my ass.
Now to next. Williams.
A damn way.
guest house were provided with a menu offering sexual services, including the ability to purchase sex with boys as young as 10 years old. According to testimony, the printed menu featured information about exactly which sex acts you could purchase, information about exactly who you could purchase those acts from, and prices for each. Now, according to the quote official story, I use the word official because it's not official, it's just a lie, a cover-up. Less than 10 individuals were snagged in this sting at the guest house. However, we now know that there were, in reality, more men present inside of the guest house that evening, and in fact, that during the raid, 23 different men were reportedly detained. 23 is a much higher number than less than 10. Why would the authorities lie about this? Were there people inside of the house that they didn't want to document seeing inside of there? Well, you'll see why soon. When the authorities searched the hotel/home, they found what can only be described as a torture chamber. According to reports, the townhouse was described as having bedroom suites adorned with whips, chains, and ropes, alongside communal areas featuring a lounge, bar, spa, sauna, and a screening room for pornography. According to police sources, among the guests that were found inside of the Elm Guest House that evening were 3 parliamentary ministers, high-ranking members of the British government, and a member of the Queen's royal staff. Interestingly, though, it seemed that just moments after the raid was finished, the authorities began to distance themselves from their own actions. They denied details that linked to the press about the affair. They remained tight-lipped about what they found inside of the home. And it really seemed like they just wanted the public to forget that they had even conducted a raid in the first place. Just take a look at this quote from the British newspaper News of the World from August 8, 1982. Just a month and a half after the initial raid. A Scotland Yard official said it is just a routine investigation into a brothel, something that goes on all the time. But a source close to the investigation said the top brass have ordered everything to be played down. Officially, we aren't saying anything at this stage. Every attempt is being made to make sure the names of the VIPs who have been using this place don't leak out. And with that, the cover-up had already begun before the affair had really ever started in the first place. In another newspaper article published on the same tap device was charged for keeping a disorderly house and for the possession of pornography. However, later on, the charge for the possession of CP, by the way, I'm going to shorten that phrase, those words that I just said before, into CP to avoid censorship, so you know what I'm saying when I say CP, was dropped by the authorities after a total of 7 hours. 7 hours of video footage that was discovered and seized from the premises of the guest house was ruled as inadmissible in court. A court document from the time states, by agreement with the defense lawyers, the prosecution has slashed 8 hours of videos that were to be shown to the court to just 45 minutes. The judge made an order forbidding the press to say anything which might identify the child in the case. Reporting restrictions were not lifted. Immediately, that's incredibly bizarre. Here we have the authorities admitting to the fact that they had uncovered hours and hours of CP materials inside of the guest house, and yet they refused to prosecute the people who were officially in possession of it, and refused to do really anything about it at all. It's as if they found the CP, took one look at all the material, and then threw it in the trash and moved on. I do find it interesting that if a normal citizen is found in possession of materials like these,
Ghost stories.
added to a sex offender registry and their lives are forever changed. But why did the charges against Carol and Haroon get thrown out? Could they have had powerful friends protecting them? Were they just the tip of the iceberg? You'll see soon enough. Now we have to move forward to the next year, 1983, the year after the initial raid of the Elm Guest House in 1982. In 1983, a Tory MP, or a British politician named Geoffrey Dickens, put together a list of based on what he was hearing about what really happened at the Elm Guest House.
I like this kind of stuff. I'm sorry if you don't like this kind of stuff, but I like to listen to it.
Guest house was indeed very real, was very dangerous, and that something had to be done to stop these monsters from victimizing children. Jeffrey stated at the time that the list he was compiling would blow the lid off and expose a ring consisting of powerful and famous child predators that had infiltrated the British government and entertainment industry. After working on the list, gathering information and compiling evidence,
I felt you.
was then given to the
I
Home
felt your
Secretary
tail.
at the time, Leon Britton. Remember the name Leon? He's going to come up a few more times in our story. To put this into perspective for American audiences, the Home Secretary in England, Leon Britton's position, is a very powerful figure in the British government and is in a role equivalent to that of the U.S. Attorney General or Secretary of Homeland Security. At the time that this list was received, Home Secretary Leon Britton sending a letter to Jeffrey, the man who created the list, suggesting that the police had been informed and that the list was being passed on to the proper authorities. So to Jeffrey, who made the list, it seemed like it was going well. He had compiled this list, gathered all this information, handed it over to the top cop in England. He had sent him a letter saying, we're passing this on to the right people and we're going to get justice for these kids. And a newspaper report published in the Red Deer Advocate on August 25th, 1983 confirms this, stating several public figures have been named in the Scotland Yard dossier on child. A member of British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher's Conservative Party said Wednesday. Jeffrey Dickens, a campaigner against CP, said in a radio interview that he has compiled a list of names and plans to disclose them in Parliament. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions confirmed it is studying a report on a police inquiry into a group called Information Exchange. Interior Minister Leon Britton has ordered a copy of the report by Friday. His officials said Jeffrey Dickens said the Scotland Yard report, like his own dossier, contains the names of a number of top people in public life and show business. Another newspaper article published at the time confirming this information stated British Home Secretary Leon Britton is studying allegations of a homosexual vice ring in Buckingham Palace, a government spokesman said Friday. The allegations came from MP Jeffrey Dickens, who compiled a massive dossier alleging that young males who joined the palace staff as footmen, cooks, or servants are being dragged into a web of vice. Vice and everything essentially meaning a predator ring. However, this wasn't the case. Nothing happened, and the list was never mentioned or seen again. Yes, you heard that correctly. The list of prominent individuals that were involved in this predator ring that was given directly to the Home Secretary of the UK vanished into thin air. And to this day, it's never been located. In fact, in 2013, when interest in this affair was reinvigorated, Jeffrey Dickens' list and the evidence and files that went along with it were looked for again, and were again not found. Another look for the files was ordered again in 2014 by Prime Minister David Cameron, but the Dickens list just so happened to be only one of 114 files that officials could not find. It seems as though after the list was handed over to the Home Secretary, Leon Britton, it was either hidden, destroyed, or tossed to the wind, never to be seen again. Strange. And Jeffrey Dickens himself, the guy who wrote that list and put in all the work to compile that information, talk to victims, list names and find information, shortly after having his name published in news sources as being the predator ring whistleblower, he began receiving threats. In fact, it was just a short time after Jeffrey first handed the dossier over in August of 1983 when anonymous death threats began arriving on his answering machine and in his mailbox. In addition, his home was burglarized multiple times by unknown assailants, people who broke into his residence in the middle of the night or in the broad daylight, seemingly in an attempt to send some sort of a message. It should be noted that even though these people were breaking into Jeffrey's home, they were never stealing anything. So, something to think about. A short while later, a notebook was discovered by the authorities, a notebook that belonged to a man that, at the time, was an on-the-run fugitive, wanted for a triple murder, named Arthur Hutchinson. When Arthur's notebook was examined by authorities, Jeffrey Dickens' name and other personal details, including his home address, were found scribbled on a lonesome page in the notebook. Taking this as a credible threat against Jeffrey's life, after this discovery, a security detail was placed on him for a number of weeks until Arthur Hutchinson was eventually apprehended. So, did somebody give Jeffrey Dickens his name and information to this wanted murderer in an effort to have him killed and taken out? I don't know, it's pretty weird though. It seemed that at the time, trying to expose this predator ring had landed MP Jeffrey Dickens on a hit list, and things were about to get so much messier. In 1990, new information was brought to the attention of the general public through the investigation into the death of the Elm Guest House's former owner, Carol Cassier. Remember Carol, the woman who was running the Elm Guest House at the time of the first police raid, who hugged the officer and set off his recording device? Well, she was found dead in 1990. She had allegedly owned life with insulin. Carol, like myself, was a diabetic, and according to the authorities, one day she decided she had had enough of life and injected herself with a massive dose of insulin, laid down in her bed, went to sleep, and never woke up. However, files released almost 30 years later in 2017 cast doubt on this official story. According to this article published in the Daily Mirror, pathologist Richard Shepard said Carol's death was not due to natural causes, noting her profound low blood sugar was consistent with excessive injected insulin. One abnormality raised in the files is a decision by the poison unit at the New Cross Hospital in London not to analyze the syringes and vials found next to her body to see if they were connected to her death or to check her stomach contents. Experts say this should have been normal practice in a toxicology. The article also talked about how those in Carol's life, including her own doctor, who she had been seeing for 14 years, were completely dumbfounded by her decision to end her own life. In the article, Carol's former doctor, a man named David Walker, stated, "When there are marital difficulties, you see the patient in a depressed light. Sometimes she was cheerful and friendly. I would not expect her to commit blank." But regardless of the mystery surrounding her own death, after Carol died in 1990, an individual from the National Association of Young People in Care, or NAYPIC, named Mary Moss, called for a criminal investigation into the events at the Elm Guest House. And Mary Moss was about to blow this whole thing wide open. For years, Mary Moss had been working with underprivileged, abused youths to try help rehabilitate them and help them get over their struggles. And it was through her work and her work associations that Mary had become acquainted with children who had allegedly been victimized at the Elm Guest House, and eventually Carol Kassir, the Elm Guest House's previous owner. During the subsequent investigation, after oath, Mary Moss testified and told the authorities that Carol had told her in 1989, the year before her self-unaliving, that she was still in possession of proof of the events that occurred at the Elm Guest House. Mary even stated that Carol had showed her some of these CP images that she had kept, which depicted recognizable members of the British government posing with children. According to Mary, Carol, in total, had claimed that she was in possession of photos and videos of various visitors to the Elm Guest House, one of whom was a bishop. Mary also testified that the Elm Guest House was being supplied children by a number of foster homes and care homes in the London area, including an organization known as the Grafton Close Children's Home. According to a newspaper report at the time published on August 10, 1990, in the Surrey Comment, speaking of the Grafton Close Children's Home, quote, "It was alleged the home, run by Richmond Council, supplied boys under the age of 14 to the Gay Guest House, or the Elm Guest House, during the early 1980s, said to be frequented often by top MPs and judges." But how exactly did kids from Grafton Close end up at the Elm Guest House? Well, according to Mary Moss, Carol Kassir had been involved with a group of pornographers that were linked
Oh my
to
goodness.
Grafton Close
Hey,
Children's
Ariel.
and had been in fear for her life for days, weeks, and months leading up to her random death. During this inquest, it was revealed that an ex-boyfriend of Carol's had also claimed that she had told him she had several photographs of VIPs at the guest house committing various acts with underage boys, including photos of Cyril Smith, a politician that we'll talk about in a moment. According to the ex-boyfriend, Carol had said that she was offered £20,000 by somebody for the photographs, but she thought that they were worth more. The photographs were said to be locked up in a safety deposit box in the Royal Bank of Scotland branches. But just like always in these stories, that safety deposit box was never located, and the photographs in question were never recovered. There was also a man named Christopher Fay who appeared during the investigation proceedings alongside Mary Moss, the whistleblower, claimed that Carol had showed him evidence of the predator ring's existence as well. According to a newspaper report at the time, Christopher stated that Carol had personally shown him a photo of, quote, a former Tory cabinet minister in a sauna with naked boys. High Court judge, social services director, and top businessmen were also among those captured on video at the hotel. End quote. Interestingly enough, it would eventually be revealed that the cabinet minister in question, who allegedly appeared in that photograph with the nude underage boy, was none other than Leon Britton, the Home Secretary to whom Jeffrey Dickens had turned over the list of names in 1983. Yes, you heard that correctly. The man who had been trusted to uphold the law in England, who had received the dossier exposing the alleged predator ring, had allegedly been a member of that ring the entire time. A newspaper report from the time describing Christopher Fay's allegations stated, quote, "Fay, now 69, claimed on oath that Britain had been involved in abuse, and that in May 1990 he had seen a photograph of the former Tory politician in a French maid's uniform with a young boy." End quote. But this wasn't Leon Britton's first brush with the law in regards to crimes against children. Later on, in the year 2014, decades after the Elm Guest House raid, a customs official named Marjaniel Salaki told detectives that he stopped Leon Britton at the port of Dover in the late 1980s on a routine check of his luggage. And when his items had been inspected, it was discovered, according to this agent, that Leon Britton had been attempting to travel into the United Kingdom from Amsterdam with CP in the trunk of his car. The Telegraph published an article about this incident on July 4th, 2014 that stated, quote, "A senior Tory politician said to be part of a was allegedly stopped by a customs officer with CP videos but got off scot-free. Police have been told the former MP was driving back to the UK via Dover when a customs officer pulled him over because he was acting suspiciously. The former officer, who is now retired, has told detectives that when he searched the MP's car, he found videotapes of children, clearly under the age of 12, taking part in acts. He passed the material on to his superiors, but the MP was never arrested or charged. Also, remember that young 10-year-old boy that started off this whole affair at the beginning, who told the authorities that one of the perpetrators who had victimized him was a man who he nicknamed Uncle Leon, that he believed could have been a politician? Could Uncle Leon have been Leon Britton? I'll just leave that there for you to decide. Another parliamentary minister named during this investigation by Mary and Chris was an infamous former member of the British Parliament named Cyril Smith. Cyril was a boisterous, large man who had been involved in British politics for most of his life. At the time of his death, just like with Jimmy Savile, Cyril Smith was held in somewhat high regard by most of the British public. But shortly after he passed on September 3rd, 2010, information would come to light that showed that throughout his entire life, Cyril Smith had been a violent abuser and a hardcore child predator. As it turned out, Cyril Smith, a prominent British politician and former MP for the Rockdale district, had faced widespread allegations of child spanning decades, many of which emerged after his death in 2010. You see, as far back as the 1960s and 70s, Cyril Smith was accused of physically and young boys at hostels and care homes, often under the guise of disciplinary action or impromptu medical examinations. Police investigations into the allegations occurred in 1970, 1998, and 1999, after Cyril had been accused by children of... But for some reason, Cyril Smith was never prosecuted. Reports at the time of each set of allegations suggested that Cyril's influence and connections to powerful figures allowed him to escape justice time and time again.
I'll be right back.
He was
Meet me halfway.
protected, and these allegations were dark. Some of Cyril's victims alleged that he had subjected them to severe physical, mental, and including beatings, and with one boy claiming that he was by Cyril Smith so hard that he lost some of his teeth and required stitches. Later investigations revealed that the police and Crown Prosecution Service decisions not to charge Smith were influenced by political and institutional pressures. People in the upper echelons of the British government had stepped in every single time that these allegations had been made, had silenced the victims, and ensured that their favorite predator politician, Cyril Smith, was allowed to walk free and abuse whomever he liked. In fact, in the 1980s, Cyril Smith was found to be in possession of CP, but as you can probably guess by now, he was never charged with a crime, and he was allowed to walk free. There's actually an interesting anecdote about this arrest that I found online. You see, after he was reportedly arrested for the possession of CP, an independent investigation into the incident by a journalist named Donald Hale turned up evidence that showed that Cyril Smith himself, after being arrested and booked into the local jail, had made a mysterious phone call while in custody. And soon afterwards, I'm talking like an hour or two after this phone call, the officers came into the room, uncuffed him, let him out of the jail, and never filed charges. It was later found out, though, that the people who intervened in that whole affair, who stepped in and told the local officers you have to let him go and not charge him, was MI5. MI5 being the British equivalent of the CIA. So you got MI5 stepping in, messing with investigations, and telling local police departments that they need to open up the doors and let the child predators out for some reason. I feel like I've heard this story before. Weird. In the 2010s, after Cyril's death, renewed scrutiny led to further allegations of abuse at Rockdale's Knollfield Residential School and the Elm Guest House, where Cyril Smith was implicated as being a member and guest. One British politician from Cyril Smith's own district, Rockdale, named Simon Danchuk, shortly afterwards came out in the news and alleged that Cyril Smith had a close children's home at the time, but they all was producing CP and snuff films as well. They then started publishing a Predator magazine together and working on a clandestine organization. Story though. Now, I'm going to forewarn you, we are about to use a little bit.
It hurts so much. I'm really sorry that happened to you. Kendrick did.
Meet me halfway.
My heart's fine.
I'm only 40. Ignoring your heart health risk is no way to go through the world. Take Bayer's 2-minute assessment at seniorrisks.com to understand your heart health risk factors.
We found by chance when it was a nightclub, it was a busy night, and then part 4 collapsed. End of the night, everybody left. Got builders in the next day, said, "Do you know that you've got a room that's boxed?"
Welcome to hell.
So we're gonna take our hands off, and the portal is open.
The only way I can describe it is it was a face. If you when you look into that, it looked like an alien. It was almost like a neon tube.
Throughout the caves, there are a lot of faces like this carved in the wall. It's said that they are the original members of the Hellfire Club. They included the devil in their wall carvings because they considered him a member of the club.
I have to say, I started to feel really after we opened that. Like, infinity.
Jeez.
It's a really bad. I start gagging. I just. I've never really experienced something like this. It's scary.
Meet me halfway. Hello.
Just a warning to everybody joining us this evening. This episode of the Paranormal Files is going to feature some extremely, extremely dark stuff. We are talking demonic. We're talking all sorts of malevolent and evil energy. And in tonight's video, we are going to be attempting to open a portal and allow whatever is in these caves to enter into our physical realm and interact with us. Now, we have had hundreds, thousands of people that have seen our videos for the last few years that have messaged me personally and told me that after watching one of these darker videos, they themselves have invited something into their own homes. People have reported seeing their own windows shatter. People have seen shadow figures in their houses. I don't know how this works. I've been told by different location owners that they've experienced this before through their live streaming cameras. So, I don't know. Before this episode starts, please just, whatever you do, say a prayer of protection, cover yourself in white light, build up that spiritual armor because, yeah, this is going to get extremely dark. Anyways, let's get into the video. On tonight's episode of the Paranormal Files, we're at one of the most notorious haunted locations, really on Earth, the Hellfire Caves here in England. It was inside of the cave system behind me where one of the world's most notorious secret societies used to practice everything from rituals to sex parties, orgies, and all other sorts of debaucherous entertainment. Rumors of human sacrifice surround this location but have never been formally proven. Tonight we're diving deep into the darkness. So join us tonight on the Paranormal Files for a truly special episode. This is a location that I've been waiting to visit for over a decade. This has been on one of my top spots to investigate almost my entire life, definitely my entire career in the paranormal. So I am very excited, but yeah, I don't really need to say anything more. Welcome to the Paranormal Files.
hit $180 a month for channels I don't even watch. I didn't get mad. I got...
This investigation gets very dark. Very, very dark for me. And at the very end, you are going to see something happen to me that is completely beyond the realm of explanation for myself that truly frightened me and shocked me to my core. The Hellfire Caves are one of the most infamous haunted locations on planet Earth. I mean, this is essentially a cave system, a tunnel system that was dug out with the express intent to be turned into a secret society meeting place. Now, it's very interesting. Oftentimes with secret societies, people online will conflate all of these societies with esoteric occult practices and Satanism, devil worship. But when you talk about the Hellfire Club, they were indeed, at least some of them, devil worshippers. And they were attempting to commune with these unholy spirits, specifically the devil. They were literally inviting the devil to join them for dinner inside of these caves. So one can only imagine the things that happened in those caves that were never written down. As you're going to see during the historical tour, a lot of records were destroyed and lost. I mean, there practically are no records chronicling the exact events and things that happened inside of the caves. But when it comes to the elite in society, which is the group from society that, the people that visited the caves and conducted these rituals, they're into some pretty fucked up stuff. Obviously, inside of this cave system, they were having sex rituals, they were having orgies, they were drinking, they were partying, they were wearing the robes and the cloth of priests in order to defile a holy image. They were having orgies dressed up in religious attire, which, is extremely sacrilegious. And in my opinion, keep in mind that's an opinion, I think what really happened down there was a lot darker than what we know. But we were so excited to visit.
The vibes of going through the city, arriving to Hellfire Caves, seeing the red glow on the entrance to the caves. I mean, it's enticing, but also so mysterious. It doesn't make sense why these caves, why have such a secret society, but also have such a grand entrance. That makes you really think, why? Why did they do this? But it's very intriguing, very eerie at the same time. I've heard lots of stories about this place, and I've got to say, I was pretty freaked out.
So we are here at the Hellfire Caves in West Wickham. We'll start off with sort of context of the area. So West Wickham has been a settlement pretty much as long as there's been humans in the area. There's evidence of Iron Age stone forts up at the top of the hill, Roman burials. Anytime they try and build something around here, they dig up Romans. And we know there was a village at the top of the hill that died out in sort of the plague in the 1300s. And eventually the settlement moved into the valley and became what West Wickham is today. Now, our story and the story of the Hellfire Club takes place in the Georgian era, specifically around the reign of King George II. And the caves themselves date from 1748 to 1752. And to start off, they were kind of a job creation scheme. So Sir Francis Dashwood, 2nd Baronet, who was the landowner at the time, decided that he should help the people in his area. There were a lot of crop failures, all the people in the area were out of work, and he said we should be looking after our people during this difficult time. And in fact, he went into Parliament and said to sort of all his friends in Parliament, we should be commissioning public works to give people jobs, and Parliament laughed at him. So he decided, well, I will do it anyway, and he got 100 men from the village up to the side of the hill here, and he got them to dig and to mine and to quarry, and they pulled all the chalk out of the hill and used it to make a big long road towards neighbouring High Wycombe. It gave the people work for sort of 4.5, 5 years, and at the end of it, Sir Francis ended up with an interesting cave on his private land, which he then moved meetings of his Hellfire Club into. Now, the caves themselves were probably always intended for this purpose. If you look at any map of the cave, it doesn't look like a regular chalk mine. You know, there's passageways that loop around on themselves, there's chambers, there's alcoves off to the side, and we know that the Hellfire Club had been established for several years, and they were at that point holding meetings at Menmedden Abbey, which is just up the Thames, sort of towards Marlow. But people in the area had started noticing this sort of group of meeting at this ruined abbey, sort of dressed as monks having parties, and started trying to find out what they were up to, so they literally moved their meetings underground to get away from that. Now, as we go down the caves, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the known or suspected members of the club, and also about some of our ghosts that are said to reside here. The hill has been a site of, rituals since, Iron Age times. There's stone circles up the top. We know that they had other things at the top of the hill, and obviously in the time of Sir Francis, things moved underground. The Hellfire Club were suspected to either be Satanists or at least dabble in Satanism as part of their meetings.
What an intro.
Any good?
Very good.
Thank you.
Well, take us away.
Wonderful. Welcome to hell.
If you're over the age of 50, there is a new state-regulated burial and...
You also have to watch out because we do have bats. So it's around the time of night where they like to start flying around our heads. There we go. Right. We're going to pause here so I can tell you about my nemesis, which is Paul Whitehead. Now, Paul Whitehead was the steward of the Hellfire Club. His job was to keep the records of everyone who was at their meetings, things that were bought for the meetings, food, drink, probably women. There he is, a nice picture of him from back in the day. He was known by his friends as Aged Paul, because it said he looked a bit like a zombie even as a young man. Paul is my nemesis because he burnt all those records. So 3 days before he died, he literally got off his deathbed to make sure that all those records were burnt and would never see the light of day. So a lot of the things I'll say tonight will be as far as we know, or we cannot confirm or deny. And pretty much all the information we have about the club, instead of coming from these records, comes from, letters written between known and suspected members, sort of art and poetry from the time from people who were part of the club. And the reason that we know as little as we do is because of Paul. So thank you, Paul. This is why he's my nemesis. Now, Paul and Sir Francis were very close. They were very good friends, and Paul left a bequest to Sir Francis when he died, and that is what is in my ominous paper bag. Usually when we do tours, we get someone to volunteer to take it out of the bag. Got no peeking, reaching. What do you got?
Well, it's slimy.
Perfect. Yes. So Paul Whitehead had left Sir Francis his heart. There's a tissue for you. Because it is slimy. So he left Sir Francis his actual heart. They took it out of his chest, embalmed it, probably encased it in sort of wax or lead or something as a preservation method, and gave it to Sir Francis, along with £50. It's not a real one, I wish. And he gave these things to Sir Francis so that they could be entombed in the mausoleum at the top of the hill, which they were. The £50 was so that he could buy an urn to put it in, and he requested that it be placed in the mausoleum as a memorial of its fond attachment to the noble founder. And so it was. Sir Francis had this heart sort of placed in a beautiful urn, which is actually in the alcove behind me, and it was put in the mausoleum to great pomp and circumstance. They had a full funeral with military level honours for this heart in a box, and in there is the urn itself, actually in the back, and it's here instead of in the mausoleum because about 100 years after it was put up there, the heart was used as a kind of grim show and tell. So visitors could take the heart out of the urn and hold it and pass it around. It's a form of entertainment. Until it was stolen. So about 100 years after it was put up there, the heart was put in the pocket of, records tend to say, an Australian soldier, and hasn't been seen since. Fun little souvenir of your holiday, I suppose. So Paul is the first of our ghosts as well. Obviously his heart has been stolen. He's not happy about it. Paul tends to be a very angry spirit. Is heard stomping around. Stories say that he will call out, "Who has my heart?" And you're supposed to tell him, "Paul, I do not have your heart," or he will take yours out of jealousy. So a lot of the stomping footprints you hear around the caves tend to be attributed to Paul here and on the estate. Now, in the time of the Hellfire Club, this is where Paul would sit. He would have his alcove. He would sign everyone into the meetings, take down their name, where they were from, if they brought any guests. Bit of a strange thing to do for a secret society, but a lot of people suspect it was because if you went talking about the club, they needed to know who you are and shut you up very quickly. Now, he would sign everyone in and he would give them their attire for the evening. Men were dressed as monks, ladies were dressed as nuns, and Sir Francis himself was set to dress as the Pope, complete with a silly hat. As you do, you know, they had a theme party. Members would then be led this way to what we know as the circle. I'm going to walk this way. There we go. So this here is what we call the circle, and as you can see on the map, it's because it's a circle. It's very creatively named. Now, when they reach this point, members of the club would split. Ladies would go one way and gentlemen would go the other, and they would be observed by this guy and some of his friends. So throughout the caves, there are a lot of faces like this carved in the wall. It's said that they are the original members of the Hellfire Club. Some stories say that the artist William Hogarth carved them, but we cannot confirm or deny. Thank you, Paul. So this one we suspect to be Sir Francis, complete with his pointy hat. There is another one over there with a nice cross on his forehead, looking good and spooky. They're everywhere. There's evidence of a third one there, just above the fire exit sign, although he seems to have lost most of his face. And all these faces tend to be sort of placed to, you know, watch people coming up and down corridors. So, of course, Sir Francis is placed to watch the women pass by. The groups would be split, women and men, and it was said that whoever you met the other side was your date for the evening.
Will there be like any sort of ritualistic purpose to these faces?
It's one of those things that we don't know for sure, although there is one I'll show you later on which is slightly more curious. But yeah, it's supposedly it's all the members of the club. So the club had superior and inferior members. The superior members were like the 12 brothers of the club, and then the inferior members were everyone else who was invited. And so we don't know whether it's, you know, just the superior members, or if the superior members got bigger faces, because a lot of them have, you know, they're sticking out of a chalk wall. A lot of them got knocked off over the years or sort of been lost behind the work that we've done to stop the ceiling falling down. But there's an awful lot of faces down here. I think the last count, someone spotted 40 odd faces. Obviously the ones that sort of looked like this we know to be original. Some of the others it's hard to tell whether they're sort of copying the originals, it's graffiti, or if it's actual from the time of the club, because obviously it's a chalk wall and people do like to doodle in it, as much as we ask them not to.
Has anyone ever seen the faces move?
I haven't personally, but other members of staff have claimed that it sort of feels like they're watching you, or sort of the light passes over it and it looks like the eyes move. A lot of them, they sort of have almost a sunken in face, but if you light it with a candle from underneath with no other light, they sort of almost look like they jump out at you. Because obviously they were designed in a time when this place was lit by whatever candle you were holding. And we didn't have these lovely fancy lights. In fact, there's lots of places, sort of like here, where there's candle ledgers still carved into the walls, and you can see where it's sort of blackened up where there's soot has gathered. Because obviously back in the day, before it was beautifully lit by electricity, it was candles and lamps, and they just stood on these shelves. Oh, right, let's head round the circle.
It's here, and I needed it because my fridge is super empty. I'm gonna open the box.
Circle. There we go. Next we're going to pause here and look at this bit. So, as I've mentioned, there is a lot of graffiti in the caves, a lot of carving into the walls. The caves were never really shut to the public, but up until they were properly opened as a tourist attraction, you'd have to go to the guy who lived opposite and give him a few coins, and he'd give you the big key to the door and the stub of a candle and wish you good luck, because it was just a dark hole in the ground. There was no lighting. There was not a lot of sort of safety to maintain the ceilings and stuff back in the day, and so people usually would like doodle how close they'd got to the bottom and how far they'd managed to get, kind of as like a little mark. But one of the graffitis or markings, I suppose, that we know to be original is this up here. The Roman numerals 22. What we don't know is why. So there are two different theories really as to why there was a 22 carved into the wall. Some theories say that it was a marker for the guys who dug it out, that it was 22 measures from the surface or the next feature that they were going to dig. But it's the only one of its kind in the cave, and you'd think if it was that kind of marker there'd be a lot of them. They'd sort of be at certain intervals all the way through. The second theory is that it marks 22 steps to the secret passageway. Now, there's a lot of sort of poems and things from the time from known and suspected members that talk about taking 20 steps or 22 steps to reach a secret passageway. Now, the bit we're walking through right now is, as far as we know, the only tunnels under West Wickham. But local stories have always said that West Wickham is like an ant farm, that there's, tunnels that go to the estate and to the pubs and up to the church on top of the hill. As with many things, we cannot confirm or deny. Thank you, Paul. But we do know there is one bit of tunnel that we can't get into, and it is about 20 small steps that way. Okay. Here we are. Now, our secret passageway. It is similar to a lot of the walls around here. It has sort of chalk bricks in front of it. Throughout most of the cave, that's just support. But here, this has been up here longer. Now, we know there is some tunnel behind. Previous people have managed to get little pinhole cameras through and know that tunnel does continue behind here, but then it just drops away into darkness. And really irritatingly, we cannot take this bit of wall down and check because with the way the chalk is settled, that bit of ceiling is now resting on it. And sadly, we don't want to clap because it's the caves. So for now, it will remain a mystery. However, we mentioned earlier that the faces in the walls tend to be looking up corridors and facing important things. And we're being looked at by that guy. So that is one of the original faces. We're not sure who it was meant to represent, if anything, but it is currently staring at a blank wall, which, compared to where all the other faces is, makes no sense. It would make much more sense for this to be a corridor that it was looking up. Sadly, at least for now, we won't know for sure. But if I was to hazard a guess, I'd say there's more tunnel behind here. And it annoys me daily that we don't know where it goes. As one of the tour guides here, it's like, I want to know more things, and I can't because there's chalk.
Yeah, it's like you wonder what's down there.
I know.
Like original artifacts.
Yeah.
The records.
The records. Yeah, more of Paul's records, maybe. Even if it sort of goes over to the estate, there's lots of, the estate has cellars and basements, and there's also lots of sort of little follies on the estate that it could lead to, but we don't know. It's really annoying.
What's the estate?
So West Wickham Estate, it's the sort of the big house at the bottom of the hill, and it's where Sir Francis Dashwood lived, the guy who had the place dug out, and his descendants still live there to this day, so it is still the family seat. Currently it is Sir Edward is the current baronet and holder of the title, and he lives there with his family. 12th baronet, yes.
Yeah, Sir Call me. Sir Call me. It makes more fancy.
Last way. Like, so you hear some pickaxes going at something tonight. No question. So, would these be like possibly added later faces?
Yes, so obviously this one definitely is, because the lump next to it is one of the bolts that holds the wall in place. So that's just someone sort of playing with the chalk that's covering that. That's more doodling. There's possibly one there that looks like it's kind of rubbed off over the years. Again.
You can tell a lot of people put their hand in it. It's like so smooth and worn out.
Yeah, I'm trying to pick it up like a window. But you've got to think as well, you're rich enough to have a massive system of caves dug out on your land, but you don't dig it to your house, you don't have to wander up the high street to visit it. Surely you'd just, dig it into your basement and get a little sort of... Otherwise you have to, prance up the high street to get to your monk parties, and that's just silly. Yeah.
And just once in a while, just monks walking down the street.
Yeah, you're going to dig out a quarter-mile of tunnels. You're not going to sort of dig an extra few hundred feet to get to the house.
That is one.
Yeah.
You probably did.
Oh, right there.
And it's annoying.
What if you did that and just...
See that falls on us. No. It won't.
Put a lid to it to support the ceiling and then chip away, just like a hole more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
The structure there.
Out there, I don't know. Yeah.
It takes a curious Irish spirit to search the world for favors, to seek out gunpowder.
The structure there.
Out there, I don't know. Yeah. There's another one. That's a later addition, that one, I think, because that's part of the structural work rather than base wall. Nice. There we have yet another split. This is one that we don't know the original purpose to, but we tend to stop here to talk about some members of the club, and a particular member of the club, Benjamin Franklin. Yep. Well, suspected member, thank you, Paul. But yes, Benjamin Franklin and Sir Francis Dashwood were good friends. They were both sort of postmaster general of their various ends of what at that point was the British Empire. And so they worked together a lot, and Franklin spent a lot of time visiting West Wickham while he was over here. Now, we don't know for sure that Franklin was a member, but we do know that he often visited West Wickham around the time that club meetings would be taking place. They kind of had sort of twice-a-year meetings, sort of big meetings, and then sort of sporadic ones throughout the rest of the year. Now, it would have made sense for Franklin to want to be a member of this club. A lot of the members of the club were members of Parliament, you know, rich landowners, artists, and sort of people who wrote in newspapers, all important people for him to befriend at a time where he was over here sort of working on the case for American independence. So a lot of useful contacts to have. But Benjamin Franklin was also an interesting character. One of my favourite quotes from him comes from a letter that I believe sits in the Library of Congress called An Advice to a Young Man on Choice of a Mistress. He was writing to a friend of his who was looking to acquire a mistress, and he said, "You should always choose an older woman as a mistress because they appreciate the attention more. And in the dark, all cats are grey."
Wow. That's the man on the underdog.
Yeah. Yes. He also suggested that if you put the basket over the head of a woman and regard only what is below the girdle, it is impossible to tell an old woman from a young. But we are going to go around the other side and meet another member of the Hellfire Club. And here, watch your head through this bit. I'm sure I don't have to worry. Go. Right. Oh, you guys got the light. We're going to stop here. There we go. So I mentioned earlier that they carved all the members of the Hellfire Club into the wall. And that includes this guy, our devil. Obviously, he has, over the years, lost one of his horns and isn't quite as bright red as he was originally painted. But they included the devil in their sort of wall carvings because they considered him a member of the club. From what we know, a lot of the times at their meetings, they would try and sort of summon him over dinner to, I don't know, join them for after dinner mints, whatever they were up to. So he is another one that's carved into the wall. He looks particularly good if you uplight him. His face really glows at you. As we're passing, are the bats still on the Wi-Fi router? Yeah, there you go. Want to see some bats? There's about 6 up there.
I was going to ask, do you have bats here?
Oh, yeah.
Trap cats probably put up.
Yeah, there you go. So they're, So Natterers and Daurbentons are the types we get. Natterers and Daurbentons, they start wiggling when you shine the light at them for too long. But yeah, we have the sort of local bat people come every few months and count them.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's another one with faces. The suspicion is that this one is the Earl of Sandwich, because he was known to sort of he was one of the first people to visit what was then the Ottoman Empire on his sort of grand tour, and he sort of came back with a whole load of the clothing from over there and was known to wear it everywhere to kind of show off how well-travelled he was. He'd wear it to dinner and stuff, so he's sort of there in his big sort of like turban set up, but there's sort of several portraits of him wearing his outfit that he brought back with him and liked to show off. And then right next to him there's one that looks a bit like Groot. Not sure whether that's original or not, it's hard to tell, but yeah. But our next stop is the banqueting hall, which is kind of where most of the meeting would take place when the club was there. There you go. It's much taller than it was originally. So yeah, this is one of the spaces that suffered worst from the whole ceiling falling in thing, because obviously it's a massive void in a chalk hill. Yeah, so this space probably originally would have been about as wide as it is tall, but up until the 70s, bits would just fall off the ceiling, because obviously big void, chalk hill, and the nature of chalk is it crumbles if you don't support it properly. It's not going to do it today. It has been very much fixed, and in fact if you look up you can see how it's been fixed. A big sort of metal mesh has been bolted into the ceiling, which is great because it keeps the ceiling up, and the bats love it because they climb up above it to sleep. Now, history-wise, Back in the day, this is where the majority of the meeting of the Hellfire Club would take place. So they would have a big table in the middle, they'd have big banquets down here, big feasts, and everyone was allowed here. Superior and inferior members, everyone was allowed in this space. Now, this space also has 4 little alcoves off it. In fact, I'm stood in front of one. These days they have bars across them, mostly to stop people climbing inside, but back in the day, they would have had curtains drawn across them and mattresses inside. One of the other things the club were known for were their sort of big sort of sex parties, orgies, and it's not known whether each alcove belonged to a particular member of the club, or potentially if each alcove belonged to one of the women who were paid to be there, and they sort of would get visitors. We do know, however, that there are tally marks on the front, because they were keeping track of how many people were taken to bed inside each alcove. You know, at least those records have survived. Yes, so the meetings would take place here. They'd have big banquets. There was talk of them having like a full like quartet of musicians down here. Food was brought over from West London State, and this is where everyone was welcome. But deeper than here, only the 12 inner members of the club, the superior members, would be allowed. So this was Sir Francis and sort of his closest friends. So, you know, Paul Whitehead, the Earl of Sandwich, John Wilkes, a man called Thomas Potter, who was we'll talk about him later, but he was a poet. His half-brother, Sir John, who's the one who took the title over from him. And these sort of 12 inner members were the only ones who were allowed deeper into the caves. This is also the site of the only sort of mostly confirmed death in the cave, and that is that of Suki, our White Lady. So Suki worked and lived at the George and Dragon Coaching Inn in the High Street. It's still a sort of a pub and sort of has a little rooms you can stay in to this day, but back in the day it was one of the major stop-offs between London and Oxford, and West Wickham itself was. There was at least like sort of 5 or 6 coaching inns in the High Street, and the George and Dragon was one of them. And Suki worked behind the bar. She lived sort of in the servants' quarters at the top, and she probably came from quite poor beginnings. Her parents were probably farmers in the area, pretty much everyone was back then. This is about 1800, and she was hoping to find a better life for herself. She wanted to be sort of taken away from this life, and she was hoping to sort of catch the eye of one of the men who came from the cities, from London and Oxford, passing through. And one night she really hit it off with a guy in the bar. You know, they were sort of chatting, flirting over the bar, and that evening she returned to her room and a note was shoved under the door that said, you know, come meet me at the caves, we're gonna run away together, wear your finest dress. And it was from this guy from the bar. So, you know, Suki was thrilled. This is what she'd been hoping for. She told one person where she was going, which was her roommate Catherine, and they sort of dressed her in her finest dress, and probably her Sunday best, maybe her mother's wedding dress, and she grabbed a lantern and came up to the caves. Now, at the entrance to the cave, she didn't find this gentleman, but she could hear a voice calling her into the caves. So she followed the voice down, through all the tunnels we've just been through until she reached this space, which is the banqueting hall. Now, here she didn't find this gentleman from the bar. What she found was 3 of the local village boys who thought it was hilarious that she believed this man was going to take her away to the city. She was angry. She grabbed some gravel and threw it at them. They picked up bigger rocks, threw them back, and struck her in the head. Now, the ending of the story differs. There's a few different versions. In some, the blow killed her instantly, and the boys left her here, maybe dragged her to the entrance and left her there. In other versions, the boys ran off, but the blow hadn't killed her, it just knocked her out, and she managed to crawl back to the entrance before passing away. Some versions have them taking her back to the George and Dragon, where she passed away in her rooms. But Suki is probably the most prolific ghost around here. She is seen and heard most days, either here at the top of the hill where she's buried, pretty much directly above our heads, or at the George and Dragon pub where she used to live. She is sometimes seen at the end of corridors, a flash of light going past, or people hear sobbing, screaming, gravel being thrown. That tends to be Suki.
If you had hernia surgery and later needed a revision or removal surgery after 2017, this message is for you. Hernia mesh implants, including brands like Bard and Covidine, have been linked to serious complications such as abdominal pain, adhesions, infections, bowel
Suki.
These statues aren't original.
No, they are replicas of various, I think, Greek and Roman gods. The Hellfire Club itself liked its symbolism a lot. So obviously, they all dressed as an order of monks, and they called themselves the Monks of Bedbedden, the Knights of Sir Francis. They never actually called themselves the Hellfire Club. That's kind of a nickname they got. But they loved their sort of symbolism of kind of various ancient religions from across Europe. So Francis was sent on 2 grand tours in his youth because they kind of hoped that he'd go and get some culture and meet some people and calm down. And he came back with a great appreciation for the sort of art and architecture of Europe and worse, which is how things like the Hellfire Club ended up happening.
Why would they dress as like the monks and the nuns?
They like to sort of dress up as monks and then sort of almost perform these sort of satanic acts. They were known...
Back. Oh, cold.
Satanic acts. They were known or suspected to dabble in Satanism. Whether they were actual proper Satanists or kind of rich boys dabbling is hard to tell because we don't have the records because of Paul. But yeah, they were very much sort of thumbing their nose at the religious institutions of the day. So back then it was a case of you were either a good, upstanding Christian in public, or you were a terrible person. So in public they would be these sort of like good, upstanding figures. So Francis and Benjamin Franklin even sort of wrote a new prayer book. It was one of their kind of little side projects when they were hanging out. They wrote sort of this prayer book to try and make church services more sort of enjoyable for the masses, rather than sort of a bit long and boring like they thought they were at the time. So they'd have these sort of public sort of images, and then they'd come down the cave and do the complete opposite. And they'd have orgies and satanic rituals, black masses, sort of big sort of gluttonous banquets that they have in here.
It's kind of like defiling and dressing as it and doing these things. Because there's a lot of stories that we've done on different like sects that will dress as bishops or monks, and then sometimes like have sex, which is unfortunate. I'm not saying that happened here, but that's just like something I've noticed. It's interesting. It goes along with that esoteric thought of like inverting for power.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we don't know exactly what kind of sort of people were brought in for the orgies. We know that, what's the quote? Women of a cheerful, lively disposition to improve the general hilarity was kind of the the type of woman they would invite. Almost definitely prostitutes. Maybe if some of them had sort of like wives and mistresses who were kind of down for that kind of thing, they'd be brought along as well. But definitely a large number of the women were paid to be there for their services. So.
Would this be where like black masses were held and stuff like that?
Oh no, that's deeper down.
Born with my skull on the outside of my head, formed into a crown. My mother took one look at the bone.
Yeah, on some of our events we do with the Hellfire Caves, a couple of happenings in particular sort of spring to mind. We decided one night whether we could back up to line up. There's a little passageway at the back of the bank was in. I think Bradley was one end and the other end, and we were having 4 to 6 stones, and they were coming through from here. There was nobody in this area at all. Another night, this
Rocks were being thrown at you.
these were coming like through. Yeah, that one out. That one through there. Some of those moved around. She looked harmless. The second time, it was only me that saw it, and I still can't work out. So I always remember when I come down, obviously when it's pitch black, when you're looking down that way, it is just pitch black. The only way I can describe it is, it was a face, and you know how we see these sort of, like a guy Fawkes, with the pointy, and the beard. That was like a neon tubes. It was like a neon line outline of like just the face doing that, but it was like how we see Guy Fawkes. I don't know if that fits in with any portraits of any people that were there, but it was, yeah.
You saw that?
I saw that from roughly standing here, looking down. If you ignore the red light there, it's pitch black when you look into that, it was like leaning, and it was almost like a neon tube. Do you know the neon tube signs? Just like that, but with the goatee beard. Yeah.
Did it have holes?
No, but it was, yeah, that pointy chin, yeah.
That's a little creepy.
Yeah. People tend to feel unwelcome down here, is the other thing, because we are. So this is as far as all the inferior members of the club were allowed. Past here, it was the inner superior members of the club as well, so the 12 sort of brothers of the club. Quite often we get people picking up a presence sort of stood here as well, which we suggest might be some sort of guard who's guarding the door, because obviously only certain people are allowed past here and someone would be blocking their path. Now we're going to go past here, because they're dead and they can't stop me. Right, now this part of the caves is currently known as the Triangle, which is very creative because it is a triangle. But back in the days of the Hellfire Club, it was known as Judgment's Pass. It was said that when the members came this far, they would be asked to judge themselves. If they considered themselves a saint, they would go this way. If they considered themselves a sinner, they would go the other way. And it said that if you chose incorrectly, that judgment would come to you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in the future. Now, I know me, so I'm going to go this way. I'll let you guys judge yourselves.
Okay, down the bottom end, we do get people actually feeling not great. Women in particular are touched. What do you see?
Where does that happen?
Further down, right down the bottom end, towards the River Styx, the other side of this, as we step into hell.
You ever been to hell before?
2002.
What happened?
It was a good evening, if I remember right. We had that, so we got touched. I think that was further down as well, actually.
Yeah.
And just standing around it, it's always when you're not filming, which is I always find ironic. And you just have a bit of downtime, just having a bit of a laugh and a chat, and then all of a sudden,
and
it's like, what was that? We also had a lot of voices. They took voices. The problem is with the cave system, it echoes, so it was hard to know, was it one of our team, was it? And that's why I was trying to distribute the voices further apart. But yeah, there was a couple of children sounding voices, which was really unusual.
Footsteps approaching further down there as well.
Yeah, children voices, that tends to be another one of our spirits, Martha, who's a young girl who tends to run up and down the long straight bit. We don't know exactly who she is or why she is here, but anyone who gets in contact with her, her name's Martha. So I'm going to declare myself a sinner and go this way. I don't know about you guys.
Wait, can you get judged down here? I want to get judged.
Okay, right, well, we'll head a bit deeper then.
This guy's creepy as hell.
Oh, yes, that is John Wilkes. You'd think it's a bad mannequin, but no, he was that ugly. It was said he shouldn't look at pregnant women in case it was catching. Yep, I've got a picture of him somewhere, I'll show you in a minute. Now, this is one of the spaces that we don't know the original function for. We currently have mannequin displays in here. It's possible it was, storage for food and drink. It's pretty cold down here all year round, so it'll make a decent fridge. But we don't actually know why it's here. And I don't know if that's Paul's fault, but I'm blaming him anyway. Most of it's his fault. But we are just before what is known as the River Styx. Now, as we've mentioned, they like their symbolism. And the River Styx is obviously from Greek mythology, the river between the land of the living and the land of the dead. So if we head this way, I'll show you our River Styx.
Yourself to some real downtime and try it out tonight.
Ben Verified found money that was owed to me, and all I had to do was claim it. I used Ben Verified's.
Whoa. That is crazy. Holy shit. I didn't expect there to be a river.
So, the River Styx. Now, the bit we're stood on is not original to the caves in the time of the club. This bridge bit was put in when we opened as a tourist attraction, just to make it easier to get across. But in the time of the club, they had stepping stones, or some stories say a full gondola down here to get across this nice little bit of river. Now, it is a real water source, so it's just where the water table sits around here. When they were digging it out, they found it and thought, we can make a feature of this. But it is not a river, sadly. I'm here to ruin all the magic. It's actually more of an S shape. So each way it goes around the corner and stops, but it's designed to look, when crossing with, a candle or a torch, that it looks like it goes on forever. It's not actually that long. The stalactites and stalagmites, also not real, part of the display. The ones we have currently are mostly sort of chicken wire and foam over the top and painted. There's some stories that they had fake ones back in the day that they'd like stolen from Cheddar Gorge. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. We haven't found them down here. But it is a real water source and it's really cold. As someone who's been wading in it, I do not recommend. Yes. So we decorate it for Halloween and Christmas. We put sort of bits floating in the water, like usually limbs and things to go with whatever the Halloween theme is, which is great, because to get them in, you just sort of throw them from the bridge. But then to get them out, you go in with waders and fish them out. It's more likely that the wires grab you underwater in there, actually, because obviously with all the wiring and stuff under the water, they're just sort of laying there.
These gate connections, are those original?
These ones, we think so. They're certainly sort of older than any of us here. There's a gate on the inside that's not original, because the inner temple itself used to have the same problem as the banqueting hall with the ceiling, so we didn't let people in there up until lockdown when that was fixed. So these ones, probably more from the time of the club. The ones on the inside, more modern. So obviously they've very much gone for the whole symbolism of the river cutting off their ritual space from the rest of the world. And I did used to have a colleague who claimed to see bodies floating in the water. Yeah. So we've had a few people work here over the years who have sort of more like medium tendencies, sensitivities to these kind of things. And this one colleague in particular refused to come down here. She wouldn't go past the banqueting hall because it just felt really wrong for her. But any time she ended up having to come down here, she would not look in the water because she saw bodies in it. There you go. Right, let's head into the inner temple. There we go. There we go. So this is the inner temple, and it's actually probably the most graffitied space in the cave, actually. There's an awful lot of writing in the walls, to the point that we don't know what's original and what's not. You know, it's been sort of 270 years of people doodling. But we do know that we are currently stood about 300 feet directly under the church on top of the hill. So someone actually like 3D scanned the caves and the hill, and we are directly underneath. I have the picture of it actually, where's my thing? But yeah, how the heck they measured it back in the day, I don't know. Some very talented architect figured out exactly how to do that. They like their symbolism, there it is. So we are here, and directly above us is where the altar of the church sits. Exactly, you've got your heaven above and your man dug hell below, and they did it on purpose. Now, but yeah, quarter of a mile from top to bottom, and it's not too bad on the way down, but you feel it on the way up because you're walking uphill. Been here 3.5 years and the hill doesn't get easier. But yeah, so this is the very bottom chamber of the caves, and this is where the sort of inner circle of the club would hold their private meetings. Now this is another thing that we don't have a lot of confirmed information about because of Paul, but it is suspected that they would sort of partake in various sort of, I suppose, private orgies, rituals. There are sort of stories of them performing black masses. We don't know if they partook in like sacrifices, because again, that's not written down. But we do know that this particular room is probably one of our most haunted rooms. It's said that there's a portal down here, because obviously with the club carrying out their rituals, potentially not exactly knowing what they were doing, or just sort of playing around with things, and so not doing it properly or safely. And people have been coming down here and doing rituals ever since. A few years ago we had a satanic priest in here, not by choice. We had a filming come down here, and those of us who were up in the cafe with the crew that kept hearing, oh, the priest will be here soon, and we're like, interesting choice, but sure. Satanic priest showed up in his full regalia with his books and everything, wanted to burn Bible pages down here, we didn't let him, so he burnt them in the car park and brought the ashes down. There used to be a table in here, so he had a full pentagram set up on it, you know, sort of drinking his sacrificial wines, the whole 9 yards. And it's strange because before that this space was always kind of tranquil. It's like pin drop silent in here when I'm not yapping, and it's always been kind of like a calm space. After we had that guy in, it was so the vibes just went completely wrong for like months. We had the space cleansed, but it's still not clean. It'd be interesting to see what you pick up.
So what would their rituals look like? Is there any idea or theory?
Again, we don't know. But from sort of club, they'd sort of do like a black mass. They'd have a woman and drink the sacrificial wine out of her navel, you know, the whole 9 yards. The story is that the club had the largest collection of satanic literature at the time as well, so clearly they were reading up on the subject, as well as one of the largest collections of pornographic literature. So, you know, well read. In certain ways. But yes, this space is also where we attribute our hooded figure to, which is another one of our spirits. So the hooded figure only started showing up after the inner temple was open to the public. So around sort of 2021, when people started being allowed back after lockdown. We don't know who it is. Several people who've been here and tried to sense it reckon it's a manifestation of the devil, like maybe the club finally succeeded. But it's just a figure completely in black robes, tends to stand at the end of corridors or in one of the arches of the facade out the front and just watch people. We've also seen it in the top of the tower on top of the church as well.
Really? You've seen it in the tower of the church?
Yeah, so the church on top of the hill, the Church of St. Lawrence, pretty much directly above our heads right now, and it has the golden bull on top, which West Wickham is kind of known for. And the golden bull was put in by Sir Francis. He kind of did up the church, essentially, because there was an old medieval church up there that was, you know, the roof was falling in and it was all a bit sort of ruined, and he had it sort of extended and made much more of a grand feature, and the mausoleum at the front as well, so this is his family mausoleum. He sort of made the top of the hill, you know, something to look up to, something to be proud of, and in fact, the road that they made by digging out these caves is a straight line looking at that golden ball. So he was very much like, here is the road that presents my golden ball and mausoleum atop the hill. But yeah, in the tower we have seen the hooded figure sort of, again, he kind of looms over and looks at people, just like standing and looking down at the churchyard. At the churchyard. Yeah, battery died. There is actually a space to sit inside the golden ball. You can sit about 6 people in there. They don't let you up anymore because it's a bit wobbly, and obviously they don't want it rolling off the roof. But back in the day, Sir Francis would sit up there with his friends. They would take drinks up, and he'd also use mirrors essentially to signal to one of his friends over in Camberley who had a similar sort of golden ball on top of a monument, John Norris, who I think also lived at Hughenden for a while. He had a similar tower with golden ball on top, and they'd sort of use mirrors in the sun to flash signals to each other.
But I guess my question is, like, I feel like with some of these clubs and these groups, they utilize the imagery that is satanic or occult coded.
Getting a charger. Dinky dong. Ding ding dong. Yeah.
I swear, I started drinking this stuff way too soon because when I tell you my stomach disrespectfully flat, like I don't know how I ended up here so soon. I got the drink.
is satanic or of it, but they're not actually like something like you said, they become rich party boys. Yeah. When you go to this length, you have those stories and those texts. I mean, I feel just reading into it, like I'm actually trying to conjure something over reading ultimate point of the plot.
It's one of those things that's hard to tell due to sort of lack of proper records, but yeah, with the sort of the length they went to and the amount of symbolism they put into it, you get the sense that at least some of them were sort of properly into it, doing it properly.
I'm doing good. How are you, Lonely? I'm watching.
I know that there's a lot of stories about how they would
Creepy.
sort of try to sort of toast to the devil at dinner and sort of summon him to join them. In fact, that's where the baboon story comes from, which is my favourite story. So there were two members of the club, the Earl of Sandwich, who's the guy who invented the term the sandwich, a visionary. He was a prolific card player and he would instruct his staff to put his meat between two pieces of bread so that he didn't have to stop playing cards to eat his dinner. And obviously the term the sandwich stuck. And there was also John Wilkes, who was sort of a poet, a writer, had a fair bit to do with the press as well, and they did not get on. They were like political opposites. They had this sort of weird rivalry going on, but they ran in the same social circles.
Oh, you're fine. You're no problem.
I've got pictures of them actually. John Wilkes is the one who saw
It's been very quiet on here. I mean, yeah, people come in, said hey and all that, but it's been kind of.
Yes, and then of course the Earl of Sandwich, complete in his lovely turban, which is why we reckon that particular face of the wall is him because of the turban. Now they didn't get on, and the kind of prank war culminated in a prank that Wilkes played on Sandwich. Wilkes acquired a baboon. Now, this was a time when people went sort of on their travels and came back with a bunch of animals and didn't really know what to do with them, so they just put them in the garden. And one of his friends had a baboon. And so he got this baboon and he dressed it up as the devil. And he put it in a box.
Well, thank you.
And he put the box in the corner of the room where the club were going to be having dinner.
I'm from North Carolina, so I got that southern accent.
Place to have meetings, they'd sort of use both. So that evening he knew it was Sandwich's turn to be giving the toast, and they sort of take it in turns to sort of toast to the devil and invite him to join them for dinner. And so
I like Michigan. I was just in Michigan in August. I was up in Traverse City. I was up there for a few days in August. Now I'll tell you. Yeah, they do. I live about 3 hours from that. 3 or 4 hours from. Yeah, actually 3 hours from the base. Marine base. Michigan. Now, your weather in the summertime. Oh gosh, I wish our weather was like that. But we got. I mean, y'all got the same temperatures and stuff, but y'all don't have no humidity. We got the humidity with ours. I mean, I'd walk outside my house, and I'm like, and we were up there, and I walked out. Yeah, it was a little hot, but I'm like, dang, I can just walk outside and it not even bother me at all. But down here, summer sucks. The humidity, oh my gosh, is the worst. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. Now your winters are. I don't know if my husband said he'd like to be up there He'd like to move up there. I said, huh. I said, I said, well, if we do that, I said, well, we'll move up there in the summertime and then live down here in the wintertime. I said, I don't want to live up there in the wintertime. I said, we can make that, 6 months up there and, well, yeah, like the whole summer up there and then come down here when it gets cold. Because y'all get a lot of snow. Gee, goodness. Well,
and immediately started freaking out. He started, calling on people to save him. He claimed he was a God, said that, I was only fooling. Eventually, the madman jumped out the window, and they weren't able to catch him.
you know how to drive in that shit. We do not know how to drive in this shit. Nope. Nope. Because we don't get as much snow. Now, this winter, we did get a lot of snow. We hadn't had that much snow since, I think, 2004. And, yeah. We had snow for 2 weeks straight. Here. It was crazy. Since just, see, we got close to a foot of snow this 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 winter, and that's the biggest snow we've had in a long time since 2004. And I think the before that we had like the week before that, before it started, we got that ice, some of the ice storm that came up from the south, but we didn't get it as bad as the further south you went. Further south and west you went down. They got all of that. But we just got the end, most of the end of it. When it hit us, it is about over with. So, I mean, and and if we do get snow, most of our snow comes from the south. Because the mountains, which I live like an hour and a half from Asheville, so, and then like 15 minutes from Charlotte, so I'm like in between Asheville and Charlotte, but I live closer to Charlotte than I do Asheville. And if the mountains get snow, we don't get it because it goes straight to the mountains, whether it comes from down from the north or from the west. It hits the mountains either way before it even hits us. Now, if it came up from the south, yeah, about biggest part of the time, mostly we get that stuff, but not very likely. There is, I mean, there probably. Now, I know some people that used to get good moonshine from, I mean, straight moonshine. But, I mean, don't mess with those people no more, but yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, most of those shows you see on TV mostly are from the ones that are from North Carolina, Tennessee, and, yeah.
But the rest of the club kind of caught on to what happened because Ross was sat there laughing his arse off. Sandwich was furious, humiliated, and had nothing to do with the club ever again.
My cat is after a bug. Oh, she's so weird. I'm trying to get some watch hours in. I have like over 600 and something watch hours left. So I'm trying to catch up on my watch hours. That one night I was on here, I was on live for 5 hours. I did a 5 hour straight live stream. I've done live streams like 3 hours or 2 hours and like 3 live streams of 6 hours. But I never done one, just one live stream was 5 hours before, 5 or 6 hours. I did that like the other night. That was crazy. Oh, that would be nice. So yeah, I got like, well, the analytics was showing me 2300 point one, but on their little chart thing, it was just showing me having 1900, almost 2000, and I'm like, and most people say you shouldn't sit there and stress over your watch hours. No, I mean, we just, oh, hey, Barbara. We just sit here, chit chat. Not really, ain't much topic, but specific topic we talk about, or I do on my channel. I basically do cleaning, cooking, chatting, cutting up, have no drama. I like people to come in here, feel peaceful, feel like they like to be in here, enjoy themselves, have fun, and cut up. There's no specific. As long as there's no drama, no negativity, no disrespecting each other or, anybody. That's all. That's all I ask for. That's why a lot of people like come. They're like, I like coming to your channel, those live streams. You don't have you don't care. You don't want no drama in there. Your live streams. You know. Oh my gosh. Well, when I first started, I was at 50 subs. Now, I think you probably have to have more than that to go live. When they made that new rule, now that you gotta have 4,000 watch hours, 1,000 subs to get monetized. The thing is, I'm in the middle of the 3,000 for the 500 subscribers to 3,000 watch hours. Then, but for me to get the ads, like you put like the ads that you watch, that help the people that you watch their watch hours too. Um, I need 4,000 watch hours on that one, and I need 1,000 subscribers on that one to get the ads. But to get monetized, I just need. I already got all my subscribers for that one, and I got, like I said, 2,300 watch hours in so far. So, yeah. And they made that where back in April of last year, you had to have 4,000 watch hours and 1,000 subscribers to get monetized. So, I got lucky on the one part. Yeah, it's where you get paid and you get to pay, and people pay, they put super chats and super stickers and all that. The thing is about getting monetized is YouTube takes 30%. You get 70%, but they get 30%. of what you make. But that's crazy. I guess because I guess they have to make money somewhere too. So yeah, and yeah, some people like, and you see these other people say, "Well, I got the watch hours, I got the the watch hours, and I got the subs to get monetized." But they're like, none of some of them's like, it's not worth it. I mean, if I get monetized, I get monetized. I'm not hooting and hollering and fussing and having a big meltdown about it. But if I do, I do. If I don't, I don't. I mean, hey, I'm on here to have fun. Heck, even if I just did get monetized, and I just got the super chat and super stickers, hey, I'd be happy with that. And not worry about those ads and junk, I mean, that would help out, but if I just got this, I mean, super chat and super stickers, I mean, that would be fine with me. Or if no one got monetized at all, that's all right. I mean, I just like to have fun. I like to have chit chat, and you know, yeah, understandable. There's a lot of people say, and I couldn't do like most of these people on here. I can't do 10 to 12 hours on live streams a day. I'm like, how the heck? Unless you aren't working at all and you make YouTube your job, full-time job, period. And then I've heard people say, well, I'm going to quit my job when when I get monetized. And I'm like, what if it don't work out with YouTube? So, you know? Yeah, a lot of respect to those. I'm not saying I have nothing against it, but if you're gonna make YouTube your full time job, then I mean, kudos. I know Mr. B. He's got us all beat. Yeah, definitely got everybody. To even the ones that's like, oh, I'm very famous. Everybody would know who I am. Nah, no, they don't. Unless you're Mr. Beast. Now, if you're Mr. Beast, that would be a lot different story. Or you're the owner of YouTube, then that's it. Or, well, Google has ownership of YouTube, but unless you're owner of YouTube and Google, or you're Mr. Beast, then you're not really well known unless you're other than on YouTube. I mean, that's it. I mean, I've seen people go out here and say that, oh, everybody will know who I am. I'm number one person in this world. And I'm like, okay, whatever floats your boat. Well, thank you. I try. And everybody knows, if they come in here, leave the drama out of it. Out of my chat. And they all respect me of it, too. But, I'm thinking, I've seen people do those. I'm sitting here like, what the heck? I mean, that's fun if it's like a challenge or somebody's going to donate you or you want to do it like a challenge, but, and I'm sitting here looking and I'm like, I see them do it all the time. And I'm like, well, then they must be getting donated to for them to be actually being doing stuff like that. And then I've seen them do milk cartons, milking, and I'm like, and the way expensive milk is, oh my gracious. And then, have you seen the ones that have the little shark thing? I mean, it's a little game thing, and they're two Asian boys, and they got this big old shark. I don't know, it was like a shark, and you had to pull the. They're sitting there going, "Do you think we're going to get this?" I'm like, I said, "Well, I'd rather watch that than some of these other crazy ones I've seen on here." Oh my gosh. Have you watched that one? There's a man and a woman. I guess they're married. I don't know. They're from like they Russia or something. They got a very crazy accent, but they're on here and they're dancing and singing, and she wears these all different kinds of contacts in her eyeballs. You could tell they're not her real eye color. You could tell they're contacts, and they're on here dancing and singing, and I'm like, she's like, oh, what the heck? Oh my gosh. I don't know what their thing is, but yeah, they'll get on here and they'll be dancing and they'll be singing, and then I don't know. Some of it be like I guess in their language, and then they do it in English, and I'm like, what the heck? Hmm. I've never seen that one. And then you get on here and I'd rather see stuff like that than some of the stuff have seen on here do. And I'm like, what the hell? Sorry. What the heck? And there's people are like, what the heck? They get less money or don't get no, and then they're monetizing. They don't get no super chats or super stickers. But you look at these other ones that do some crazy shit on here, and they get 500. I've seen people get $500, $600. I'm like, what the heck? In super chats, I'm like, what the hell? It's like crazy. I mean, and people are like, what the heck? I'm sitting here doing stuff or just plain doing something. And then I've seen these ones they're getting $500, 400, 300. I mean, this is back and back. I mean, people are sending super chats of money, that much money. I'm like, what? It's crazy. Mm. And the stuff I see there. Oh, I know there was this one, and I think she got her channel taken down though, but uh, she was, she was Oriental. I think she was, I think Japan or somewhere over there overseas, and she would take her dress and put it over the fan. People were giving her super chat money. I'm like, oh my god. When she was doing this, she'd go, and then she'd run back over and look at the camera, and then she'd run right back over there and just take her skirt or dress at the, and she goes, ah. Yeah, I know you do. Jeez. Yes. I don't know. I think that got taken down, but I thought that for the longest time, I thought that was funny just to watch. But it was hilarious. It was hilarious. And she would come, I mean, it would be late for us though. But, early for her. She'd be home late at night. Oh my goodness. Oh, you do. Oh, I've seen some crazy stuff, especially at late at night time. Nothing, nothing happens. Good happens after midnight, and on the internet, and nothing good happens in real life either. After midnight. Oh my goodness. Oh. Mm. Nothing good happens after midnight on the streets of YouTube. That's when the crazies come out. Biggest part of them.
Very much sort of playing both sides of it and having this sort of public image where they're these sort of good, upstanding members of society, these sort of well-dressed gentlemen who were, members of parliament and were doing good public works. And
Oh my goodness, my nose is itching.
members of parliament and were doing good public works and giving people jobs, and then they'd go underground and the complete opposite, the sort of the Satanism, the sort of
Yeah, I'm comedy and then I've seen some of their drama on here too, and
it's something that people sort of experience down here a lot. We're not sure sort of what to attribute it to, but a lot of people, feel like something's like
I mean, there's some of them that'll be comedy. And then there's one on here, he calls himself the Minuteman. And he does military stuff during the day. nothing, nothing wrong with that, but
probably the hooded figure. In particular, because it's such a man, Suki. She's angry, she's sad, and she tends to be more of a bit of works. So, but the worst she does is throw stones. Paul, again, he's loud and he's angry, but the hooded figure is the one that we know the least about. So he's probably the most dangerous just because we don't know what he does and is capable of. But this space as well is said to be important, so we get a lot of passers-by, sort of people who aren't necessarily tied to the cave. They're just sort of like, kind of like, it's like Grand Central Station, people pass through, and mediums that we've had down have said sometimes the cave is like, like walking through Piccadilly Circus, and it's so loud in their heads, and sometimes it's, you're just walking down shortcut and you see like one or two things out the corner of your eye.
Crazy paranormal stories you've ever shared?
I mean, we get people talking about experiences down here pretty much every day. I've had colleagues who've had their hair tucked against the wall, who feel like they're being literally shoved out of the cave. We even have things happen in the cafe. We've got like a big display cauldron that we put glow sticks in to sell them, and that gets pushed off of sides. I think the craziest thing is that it's constant. Every day there's something. Someone comes up and just sort of like felt like someone was pulling my hair.
Oh, I think he's on.
People come up with handprints
He
on
comes on every day, every morning at 6 a.m. Eastern time.
near them. So my colleague Willow is one of my colleagues that has sort of like medium tendencies, and she seems to have like a particular connection with Suki. She grew up in the village all her life, to the point where she's like seen Suki manifest at the foot of her bed in her house. We did a
All right. Well, thank you for coming in.
Willow did what's known as a walk-in, which I was there to witness. It's the weirdest thing.
You have a wonderful night.
She was my friend before I even started working here, and she was sat in front of this mirror, and all of a sudden her head sort of dropped, and when it picked up and she sort of looked around again, she started like looking at her hands and her arms like tattoos that were there shouldn't be there. Then she started talking to us, but it wasn't Willow we were talking to, it was Suki. And someone somewhere has the audio of it. It's like sort of 5-10 minutes long of this whole conversation we're having, and it's coming out of Willow's mouth, but it is not Willow, it's Suki that we're talking to. It was the weirdest night. There's so many mirrors in that room. There's too many mirrors in room 12. It's like an unnecessary number of mirrors.
Ask him to do it.
What the? Is that you? No. Did no rock just get thrown here? Did you hear that? I think we're dead still. There's something just landed right here.
Oh.
Something just landed like right here. Drop it on the ground. The sound is denser. It's not that big skin. That makes you fun. There's something in that.
That's exactly. So that's dropped from a height.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah. I was filming. Yes, right, because I just asked you to do it, and then that happened.
Thank y'all for the 16 likes.
Oh, we got it.
Thank y'all for the 16 likes.
Come on, you've got attention. Can we do something? Use your voice when you say hello. Can you whistle?
Did you just throw a rock at me?
But I think I'm gonna end this live. I'm gonna go to bed. Thank y'all for the 17 likes. Much appreciated. And I will see y'all tomorrow. Have a good one.